All right, welcome. We're live. This is Orion Rising. I'm your host, Leonard O'Neill. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, or good morrow, depending on where in the world you are tuning into this show. Share this out, share this out, share this out. Okay, and I accidentally shared it to my page. So because of that, now I don't have that chat coming into StreamYard at all. So now I have to go over and start looking at the chat on my page because it's not coming into here. So that's annoying to me. That's very annoying, as a matter of fact, because I can't see your guys' comments. So I'm going to turn that on over here so I can see. So I apologize if I end up with my sound duplicating because of the other thing that I'm about to open up the other window. So I can see the actual comments, right? And the comments aren't coming in here properly either. So I don't know what's going on there. Let me back out of this portion of this and we'll share this. Like I said, share this out. Now I can see the comments over here, but yeah, I didn't realize I was in a hurry, and I didn't realize that I was sharing it to not to Orion Rising, but to my page. And because of that, there's no freaking chat in the StreamYard chat because of that. So that's annoying. So now I'm going to share it over to the other, or if you guys can share it over, because it's going to make me switch accounts to share it there. So please share this out, and I will take a look at and keep the window open so I can read your guys' comments. Right? I see Penny there. I see Pamela there. I thought I saw Denise as well. So I got to view all the comments here. So I'll be bebopping back and forth so I can see you guys. Cassie, there's Cassie as well. Welcome. Unless I'm in the wrong thing here, right? So yeah, no, now it's in the wrong one. It was showing the right one a minute ago. So yeah, it's crazy. The whole thing is being insane for me right now. There we go. Now, so it'll probably come in again. So I apologize if you guys are there. But now I can see you guys. So hello, welcome. Share this out. Like I said, please share this out. I'll have to keep a look over there because now, for whatever reason, there is no comments in StreamYard at all. That's annoying to me. All right, let me take this overlay down so you guys can see my ugly mug here. Right, there we go. All right, so I'll be bebopping around, jumping over there to Facebook to see your guys' comments because otherwise I can't see them at all. Unless you're on YouTube, I can't tell what you're saying. That's annoying. I didn't realize I did that until I was like, why is it not here? And then I looked at where it went on Facebook. I'm like, oh, that went to me on Facebook, not to, I didn't put it in the chat to the rest of the world. So I didn't put it in Orion Rising. So please share it there to Orion Rising, guys, and share this out. So now I can see you guys who is actually here. Cassie is actually here. Denise, welcome. So I'll have to bebop back and forth. So I'll be jumping over there if I need to do anything in the chat or in the studio, and then I have to watch the chat over here to see your guys' comments. That's annoying when that happens, right? So get everybody in here. It's Friday night. The Law of One. We're on session, I don't remember the session number, 94, 95, something like that. Question number, I think we're on question number 4. So yeah, that's annoying to me that I did that. But when I went on the StreamYard, it keeps telling me that I've lost contact with most of the channels that I had acquired, like Ancient Aliens Worldwide. I can't broadcast on there. And when I try to say give it permission, it doesn't do anything, which means I have to go to Facebook, go into Ancient Aliens Worldwide, and for whatever reason, Facebook did an upgrade and it turned off all the defaults. So now I have to go in there and re-add StreamYard to be able to broadcast on every channel that I had already acquired, which means I lost the Ancient Aliens Worldwide. I lost I lost one of my Twitter accounts, but it's okay because I'm not on that Twitter account anymore. So the one that main one I have, and my YouTube page I have. And on Facebook, I don't have Returning to the Old Ways acquired anymore. I don't have the Orion Crusaders or the Orion Coalition of Light. I can't broadcast on that. So it's just annoying that that's there, and I have to go in and give them permission, give StreamYard permission from each group, which is annoying. Because other people, you don't need to do that. You click on it and it just gives you permission. It says give StreamYard permission to give itself permission on that platform. Facebook does not allow that. You have to go there, go into it, add them, then go back into StreamYard, then say yes, and then StreamYard has permission. So that's annoying. It's just Facebook trying to be in control of everything, right? So I'll be bebopping back and forth to make sure that I can see your guys' comments over here in the chat. Right, Cassie, I know I have to go over there and authorize that. That's what's even worse, right? Tried to share it there, but it wouldn't allow you, right? So yeah, I have to go and authorize it to go there. But you have one right here, right? No, you can't. I tried as well. Yeah, I have to go there and authorize it. And to do that, I have to switch accounts. So maybe while Raw's playing, I'll do that because Orion Rising is a page like Ancient Aliens. Even though it's a group, it's considered a separate entity. So when I log in to my Facebook account and then I go to do something for Orion Rising, I have to switch accounts to become Orion Rising. That's why sometimes you'll see me in the chat. And when I talk in the chat, it'll have my name. And sometimes it has Orion Rising because it literally, I have to be in that character to be on Orion Rising to do that. Same thing with Ancient Aliens Worldwide. I will answer as Ancient Aliens Worldwide, not as me. But I can switch and be me, but then I'm just a guest there as an admin, and I don't have the full range of capacity of things that you can do as the owner. So as the owner, you have to log in as that freaking owner of that page. That's annoying, but that's the way it is. So I'm going to do that right now. Let me play Raw, and we'll start that. We're on, I think it's session, you'll see because he's going to say the question number. I backed up to where when Raw got snarky when he says, can you explain that? And then Raw says yes, and then he says, will you do that, please? So I backed up to that. We just finished question 3, so I'm on question 4, and he doesn't really answer anything until question 5. So let me go ahead and do sound check, and you guys let me know, and I'll look at the chat, and then I'll go over and approve you guys at Orion Rising or share it myself to over there as Orion Rising. And I don't know if the chat will come into the StreamYard at that point either. It might. Now we'll have 2 separate chats. It'll come into StreamYard, but everything from here won't. So that'll be annoying. I think if I share it there from my page, then it should, because that's what Facebook is supposed to do. So, all right, here, let's go ahead and press play on this.
50.4 Questioner. Could you give an example of how an entity sets up a condition for attracting a particular experiential catalyst and how that catalyst then is provided or is learned? Ra. I am Ra. Such an example may be given. 50.5 Questioner. Will you give that? Ra. I am Ra. We paused to scan this instrument's consciousness for permission to use its experiential catalyst as example. We may proceed. This is one instance, and extrapolation may be made to other entities which are aware of the process of evolution. This entity chose, before incarnation, the means whereby catalyst had great probability of being obtained. This entity desired the process of expressing love and light without expecting any return. This instrument programmed also to endeavor to accomplish spiritual work and to comfort itself with companionship in the...
Okay, hopefully you guys can hear that okay. So now I have to come back over here. I still didn't get that up over there, right? Sounds good. Thank you, Denise. All right, so I'll let that play, and I'll still try to go over there and fix that. All right, so I'll be back in a second. All right, here we go. Let me come back over here, and we'll let Raw play.
The doing of this work. Agreements were made prior to incarnation, the first, with the so-called parents and siblings of this entity. This provided the experiential catalyst for the situation of offering radiance of being without expectation of return. The second program involved agreements with several entities. These agreements provided and will provide, in your time/space and space/time continuum, opportunities for the experiential catalyst of work and comradeship. There are events which were part of a program for this entity only in that they were possibility/probability vortices having to do with your societal culture. These events include the nature of the living or standard of living, the type of relationships entered into in your legal framework, and the social climate during the incarnation.
I shared it as a watch party over there. That way the chat will come in. Now I got to switch back my account here. But that's annoying that I had to do that, right? So I apologize for that, guys. So hopefully the chat will start coming in over here because it'll be as a watch party, but probably not. It'll probably just go into the one over on my Facebook page, which means I'll just have to stay here today. I had that problem one other time. You guys remember when that I did that? Jake, welcome. I had that problem one other time where I didn't share that over to Orion Rising, and because of that, that's what happens. Okay, so that's fine. I'm not concerned with that. All right, let's continue with Raw so you guys can hear it. So let's continue with this. And I'll, like I said, I'll just have to, anytime I have to do something in studio, I'll come back into the studio. Otherwise, I'll watch the chat over there. So I apologize to anybody that makes any comments on YouTube and I don't notice them for a minute.
The incarnation was understood to be one which would take place at harvest. These givens, shall we say, apply to millions of your peoples, those aware of evolution and desirous in the very extreme of attaining the heart of love and the radiance which gives understanding. No matter what the lessons programmed, they have to do with other selves, not with events. They have to do with giving, not receiving, for the lessons of love are of this nature both for positive and negative. Those negatively harvestable will be found at this time endeavoring to share their love of self. There are those whose lessons are more random due to their present inability to comprehend the nature and mechanism of the evolution of mind, body, and spirit. Of these we may say that the process is guarded by those who never cease their watchful expectation of being of service. There is no entity without help, either through self-awareness of the unity of creation or through guardians of the self which protect the less sophisticated mind/body/spirit from any permanent separation from unity while the lessons of your density continue. 50.6 Questioner, could you give an example of negative polarization sharing love of self? It would seem to me that would deplete negative polarization. Could you expand on that concept?
Right. So this is kind of basic right here, because now he's not understanding how being in service to self and being a love of self, he thinks is going to cancel out being in service to self because you're feeling the love. And so this is Dawn not quite understanding how being in service to self and being in service to others works. And a lot of people, so it's a valid question for people who are brand new and don't understand what's happening, because, how can you love? Well, you have to realize that being in service to self means you love yourself. Okay, you can love. Love works on both. Love and hate. Let's talk about that. People don't realize, people think that love and hate are these two extremes. They're on two opposite ends, and they're so far apart that they're completely different. The truth is, and I said this before, and you can look this up. Anybody who knows anything about psychology will tell you the same, that love and hate, the difference between love and hate, literally the only difference, love and hate are so similar that they're completely on the other side of the spectrum. So imagine love and hate, you think it's all the way over here, and that there's this, you have to go all the way over from love to hate somebody, or you have to go all the way over from hate to love somebody. The truth is, it's actually a circle, and they're actually next to one another. The difference between love and hate is literally levels of violence. That's it. That is the difference between love and hate. If you love somebody so much, you can actually hate them. If you hate someone so much, you could become obsessed with them and love them and not know it. You think that you hate them, but you actually love them. So people don't realize that so literally love and hate are similar. One is emotional and one is physical. So when you hate someone, that's when you're like wanting to do physical harm to them. But when you love somebody, you don't want to do physical harm to them because you want to have more of a spiritual, loving relationship. So it's literally back to back, side by side. It's a lot crazier than you think, and a lot closer than you think when it comes to that. So people who love themselves are in service to self. That is what the definition of in service to self is. Self-serving is you don't care about anybody but yourself. Okay, so you can't. So that means care. You see that word in there is care. You care about yourself. You're about yourself first. You love you. You're listening to your ego. You don't know that they're separate from you. You believe you are the ego. You think you're the ego. I am the greatest in the world. I am the best on the whole planet. I am. So to have that kind of bravado about yourself, you love yourself. You think that you're the greatest thing, best looking thing on the face of the earth, and God's gift to men, women, both. You believe that you're the best at what you do, and just ask me, I'll tell you. And so you're actually able to activate the green ray chakra, the Merkaba, but it's self-loving, not self-loathing, self-loving, not loving other people. So you're still getting half of that energy from the self, from the heart. It literally in being in self-serve. So let's let Ra and basically explain the same thing I just did, right?
Ra, I am Ra. We may not use examples of known beings due to the infringement this would cause. Thus we must be general. The negatively oriented being will be one who feels that it has found power that gives meaning to its existence precisely as the positive polarization does feel. This negative entity will strive to offer these understandings to other selves, most usually by the process of forming the elite, the disciples, and teaching the need and rightness of the enslavement of other selves for their own good. These other selves are conceived to be dependent upon the self and in need of the guidance and the wisdom of the self. 50.7 Questioner, thank you. Can you expand on the concept which is this, that it is necessary for an entity to, during incarnation in the physical as we call it, become polarized or interact properly with other entities, and why this isn't possible in between incarnations when he is aware of what he wants to do? But why must he come into an incarnation and lose memory, conscious memory of what he wants to do, and then act in a way that he hopes to act? Could you expand on that, please? Ra, I am Ra. Let us give the example of the man who sees all the poker hands. He then knows the game. It is but child's play to gamble, for it is no risk. The other hands are known. The possibilities are known, and the hand will be played correctly but with no interest. In time/space and in the true color green density, the hands of all are open to the eye. The thoughts, the feelings, the troubles, all these may be seen. There is no deception and no desire for deception. Thus much may be accomplished in harmony, but the mind/body/spirit gains little polarity from this interaction. Let us re-examine this metaphor and multiply it into the longest poker game you can imagine, a lifetime. The cards are love, dislike, limitation, unhappiness, pleasure, etc. They are dealt and redealt continuously. You may, during this incarnation, begin, and we stress begin, to know your own cards. You may begin to find the love within you. You may begin to balance your pleasure, your limitations, etc. However, your only indication of other selves' cards is to look into the eyes. You cannot remember your hand, their hands, perhaps even the rules of this game. This game can only be won by those who lose their cards in the melting influence of love, can only be won by those who lay their pleasures, their limitations, their all upon the table face up and say inwardly, all of you players, each other self, whatever your hand, I love you. This is the game, to know, to accept, to forgive, to balance, and to open the self in love. This cannot be done without the forgetting, for it would carry no weight in the life of the mind/body/spirit beingness totality. 50.8 Questioner, thank you. How does the ability to hold visual images in mind allow the adept to do polarization in consciousness without external action? Ra, I am Ra. This is not a simple query, for the adept is one which will go beyond the green ray which signals entry into Hive stability. The adept will not simply be tapping into intelligent energy as a means of readiness for harvest, but tapping into both intelligent energy and intelligent infinity for the purpose of transmuting planetary Hive stability and consciousness. The means of this working lie within. The key is first, silence, and secondly, singleness of thought. Thusly a visualization which can be held steady to the inward eye for several of your minutes, as you measure time, will signal the adept's increase in singleness of thought.
Okay, so literally he's talking about projection, right? You have to be looking within yourself. You have to be focused. You remember like from Star Wars, right? The episode 1, The Phantom Menace. I think that was what that one was called. Qui-Gon Jinn said, "Your focus determines your reality." Right? It's a Jedi thing. Your focus determines your reality. So to create, to utilize the logos, you have to be, first of all, internalizing and using your third eye and focusing your energy. You have to have what they would call in religion, you have to have faith. So you have to believe in what you're doing, know what you're doing, not think it. I think that I have faith. No, you have to actually have faith. Right? Do not. Again, a reference from Yoda at this point, from the Star Wars, again, from the Jedi, with he literally said, Luke said when they were on Hoth, when he couldn't lift his spaceship, his X-wing out of the swamp, and he said, "It's too big, I can't." And then Yoda said, "Size matters to you? You think that the size matters?" And then he went over there and he pulled it up. And he pulled it out of the swamp using the force. And Luke said, "I don't believe it." He said, "That's why you failed." Right? So the same thing when he went into the underworld, into the cave, and he said, what's in there? And he said, strong is that place with the dark side. In you must go. And he started strapping on his gun belt and his blaster and his lightsaber. And he said, your weapons, your belt, you won't need them. And he said, what's in there? And he said, only what you take with you. And he put a belt on anyway, and he went down there. And then he failed because he saw Vader and became the aggressor. He pulled his lightsaber first, turned it on first, and attacked Vader. And then he ended up chopping Vader's head off, and the helmet explodes open, and it was him in there. So he was fighting his own shadow, his own darkness, his own dark side. So it wasn't actually Darth Vader. It was him as a projection and his darkness as his biggest fear, which was facing Darth Vader. Do you see? Or his focus of what he thought he was going to have to do again. So it manifested as a Darth Vader figure, and he thought it was until after he chopped off the head, and then the whole Kobayashi Maru, which was what was supposed to be happening. So he was supposed to not go in there with any weapons and not be afraid. His focus would have determined his reality. And this is the way it is in real life. And that's why those lessons were in there. People like, that movie was fake. And it was, all movies are fake. Everything is a fake. Okay. Everything. It's been created by humans, right? Even the Bible that is written, and the New Testament that is written, we have no proof that it was written by the actual 12 people that were there that you talk about in the Bible. Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John. There is no definitive proof, empirical proof that Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John that were with Jesus were the ones who wrote what is in that Bible now. Because we know that they were not in existence until 400 years. And some say, my brother and I get into this argument, and he says, no, because one of them, Matthew, I think he says, was written around 40 years after Jesus had died. Okay, so Matthew at the time was supposed to be 20, so that means that he had to have been 60. He could have still been alive. So it could have been, but all the rest of them were written between 100 and 800 years later. So you can't attribute them to the actual person. It doesn't mean that they didn't write them, and it doesn't mean that somebody didn't recopy them a couple of hundred years afterwards when they found these old scrolls and translated them to a different language. Okay, but science doesn't look at that. They always just, this is when it first adopted. That's just like with the Viking language and the Viking creation story, because the Vikings never wrote anything down and didn't teach anyone their language throughout all of time until the 1100s, when a Viking decided to write everything down because they had, at this point, created a written language. So because of that, they started writing down all of their old stories that were being told. The Irish and the Welsh were the same way. They didn't have a written language for a long time because they were in fact Southern Vikings. So they didn't have a written language. And then when they did, it was the stick writing, Ogum, and they didn't write down everything for like dictionaries, Bibles, and history. They didn't write any of that down. They were very secretive about their people, so everything was given orally. So you actually had to know somebody to have a story be told, because they didn't want the whole world to know about their history and everything. So they did that on purpose. And so because of that, people now in science will go, well, the religion of the Vikings was created in the 1100s. No, that was the first time someone wrote it down. That doesn't mean that was the first time it ever existed, that he made up the religion. But because that, so let it be written, so let it be done, that you have to have something written down, a piece of paper, otherwise something's not legitimate. That is the mindset of the people that are running this world, that you have to have a piece of paper. That's why I have had to get pieces of paper for everything that I have that is a license. You have to get that with someone else. So you have to have somebody verify it. Well, he's legit because this guy said so. Well, I've made up fake documents in my lifetime that look like the same thing. Many fake identifications, fake birth certificates, fake IDs, and throughout my lifetime. Myself and a whole group of people had done this. So why? Because people said you have to have it, right? And we were able to get around the system for a very long time on this earth until the modern age with computers, where it made it a little bit harder. And now with DNA, it made it a little bit even harder, right? And people were like, oh, we got fingerprints. That we made sure that took care of everything. Magicians use fake fingers and thumbs that you don't know that they use because they're identical to the color of their skin, and they're wearing fake fingers and thumbs and keeping you from seeing that. Was not a difficult thing to create a thumb with a thumbprint that matches somebody's thumbprint, and you can go up and do a scanner with a thumbprint or invent a thumbprint, because that's why they started making everybody get fingers and toes printed at birth in this country. Because the second you did that, then you were on file with the federal government with all of your signatures from your fingers and your toes, so that somebody couldn't then, if you tried to be somebody you weren't, they would have a record because your parents went and got you fingerprinted and toe printed when you were a little baby. That was why they do that. The only reason that they're doing that. Why else would they do that? Why? Well, we're doing that so that in case something ever happens to the child, we'll be able to find them, right? What? That's the justification for later when they get a chip, to try and put a chip in you like they do with animals. Okay. So let me go back over here because I haven't been looking at the chat for a while, and I apologize because I was over there in the studio. So hopefully you guys didn't have any questions that I wasn't aware of, because the chat is not, I don't think that I can scroll on it. I'm going to have to click on here and find out. Let me pull this up and sound off. I apologize. Yeah, now I can actually look backwards in the chat. So I'm going to have to stay on this screen over here and go from there. Okay, so let's continue with Ra, and now I can scroll the chat. So I apologize. I was on a screen where I couldn't scroll the chat to find out what was going on. So you have to realize that let me get back on point, and then we'll get back to Ra talking. You have to realize that your focus determines your reality. And when you're trying to do something and manifest this, I've been teaching this for more than 35 years because I was teaching spell casting, spell writing, and the like, and also creating in the different guises of spell weaving and manifestation. I've been doing this since I was like 20, and I'm going to be 57. This is not a joke. So this is part of the background that I've had my entire life of doing this stuff. So manifestation is determined by your focus and actually understanding how the universe works because of your intention. Okay, your intention has to be, you have to have the right proper focus. And I was just thinking about this because the full moon is literally on the calendar as yesterday, which means in reality it's tonight. It's somewhere between right now, my time, 3:30 p.m. and 3:30 a.m. will be the apex of the full moon, because the calendar is always off by a couple of days. They've never gotten that right. For some reason, they don't adjust it either. But those of us who actually pay attention to the moon phases of the world, we look at that. And so I think on the calendar, what they do is they list it when it first goes into a full moon, because that's not the apex. And then the apex is full 2.5 days, 3 days, right? So usually even then, sometimes it's not accurate. And they'll say like it says yesterday on the calendar, and today's Friday, so it said Thursday. And for those of you who are in Australia, you're already on Saturday anyways. But the full moon for you is a day later because is a day sooner or it's actually the same time, but it's Zulu time. But you're 16 hours ahead of me. So it'll be truly for Zulu time, right? Because I'm GMT -7 and you're GMT plus 6, 8, plus 7. Or 8, something like that. I don't know. Don't quote me. You would probably know, Rick. You're over there. I don't know if you know what Greenwich Mean Time is comparative to what you are there. I think you're plus 8, right? You must be, because I'm -7 and you're 16 hours ahead of me, whatever that math is. No, that's 8, right? Because 8 and 7 is 15 or 16. I'm trying to figure that out. 8 and 7, 6, 5 is 15. So you're GMT plus 7 then probably. Okay. So, no, because then that's 7 and 7 is 14. So you are plus 8, like I thought. Okay. Sorry. That's me being a nerd now. All right. Let's continue with Ra. Being a nerd and trying to do the math in my head without looking it up.
This singleness of thought then can be used by the positive adept to work in group ritual visualizations for the raising of positive energy, by negative adepts for the increase in personal power. 50.9 Questioner. Can you tell me how the adept, then, after being able to hold the image for several minutes, what he does then to affect planetary consciousness or increase positive polarity? I still don't quite understand about this. Ra. I am Ra. When the positive adept touches intelligent infinity from within, This is the most powerful of connections, for it is the connection of the whole mind/body/spirit complex microcosm with the macro COSM. This connection enables the, shall we say, green ray true color in time/space to manifest in your time/space. In green ray, thoughts are beings. In your illusion, this is normally not so. The adepts then become living channels for love and light and are able to channel this radiance directly into the planetary web of energy Nexi.
Okay, so this is something that Ra's talking about here that is actually a effort by the coalition, off-world and on-world, to actually do repairs to the timelines and this planet, because when the planet was plunged into darkness, when the pendulum swung that far over, when the fall of man, quote unquote, that is talked about in most of the religions, the time of the devil shall rule the earth for a time, when that began, it literally tilted us off of our axis. And some people are like, no, it had nothing to do with that. It had to do with this science thing that happened where a meteor went flying by and it disrupted the planet and it flipped it over. And then other people will believe that, no, that didn't have anything to do with it. It had to do with the Atlanteans when they cracked the sky and that caused the planet to flip over when they stopped the planet from spinning and had to restart it from spinning. All of those things are true, because they all happened at the same time, by the way. So the different theories by the different people, but however, as the planet's righting itself, it's wobbling right now, and it's off. I don't know what the exact is now. I used to, it was 11.5 degrees, but that was a couple of years ago, so it might be less. It's becoming less off kilter, and it's righting itself. And as it's righting itself back upright, to be upright, you've heard those stories if you're listening to most religions, to be upright. So you're literally, as it's righting itself, so too are the people on the planet. Now, why is that important? Because when the planet went off kilter and flipped over on its axis and came back up, because it actually stopped turning, the center of it, everything else is floating on top. The entire mantle is floating, including the ocean. All the oceans and all the landmass continued to shift. And so when the planet flipped over and flipped back upright, everything was off kilter and messed up. And that's how Atlantis sank into the ocean, and it popped the ionosphere, and all those trillions of decaliters. I think it was more like millions or billions of decaliters of water rained down on the earth, raining for 40 days and 40 nights. And the sea level rose over 500 feet in less than, in a month, 40 days and 40 nights. And flooded most of the coastline. So that meant most of society on the earth, because we live mostly on, if you go to most countries, most of the big cities are on the coast. All the tourist attractions around the world today are on the coastline. If literally the sea level rose another 500 feet, we would lose probably 80% of all of our cities around the world. They would all go underwater. San Francisco would be underwater. I would be probably with water here because I'm only 38 feet above sea level, even though I'm inland by 65 miles. I would probably be underwater here. So most of our cities would be gone. New York would be flooded. London would be flooded. Those of you who live in Australia, if you're not on the direct coast, it would all be flooded. If you're inland, you're fine. People who live in the central, United States would be fine. Same thing with Canada. So as long as you're away from the coast by 100 miles or so, you're going to be fine. That's what happened in the past. So when that happened, the planet, when it came back up, was off kilter, and it was off kilter more than it is now. And as it's righting itself, okay, and some people are going to say, Peter, welcome, by the way. What's up, brother? Some people are going to say that, well, that has nothing to do with anything. Well, the weird thing is, as the planet is moving back upright to become dead 0 point upright again in that position, the moon is moving away from the earth at exactly the same rate of speed that the wobble is slowing down. Why is that? Because if the moon becomes upright at 0 point, if the planet becomes upright at 0 point, we no longer need the moon to move our tides. Science knows this. And the moon is literally moving slowly away from the earth, and it's going to reach a point where it's natural for a moon to be, because our moon is closer than any other moon we've ever been able to observe anywhere in the universe. It's far closer. There is no other place that we have found anywhere in the universe where a moon is as close to a planet as our moon is to our planet. And it is what's keeping our ecosystem running. Scientists know this to be a fact. Okay. So literally what's happening is as they also know that once the planet gets upright again at 0 point, we will no longer need the moon to cause the 4 seasons, because we won't need the 4 seasons. Okay. Because the seasons, when we're upright, we'll still move above the sun and below the sun the way we're doing now, right? Right now we're going below the sun. The planet is dipping down below the sun because our orbit is an elliptical orbit. It's not a direct orbit around like this. It's an elliptical orbit that goes up and down like this around the sun. And right now we're currently in that orbit where the planet is below the sun. The sun is up here right now, not at its apex, but it's close. That's why North America and the northern hemisphere of the planet is going into summer, and the southern hemisphere is going into winter, because they're farther away from the sun now than they were not too long ago. Okay, so as that's fixing itself, you have to remember that the planet is off kilter. So all of the energy lines of the Earth are in the wrong places for the Earth. And that is damaging to the Earth and all the energy of all of us on this planet, and everything that is harmonically resonating from the planet that's supposed to be at a certain frequency that is conducive to the proper resonance of this Earth is off. So there are a group of us who, and some of you out there are going to be freaked out about this right now, but there are a group of us who are, while we're awake, changing that energy and giving the proper energy to heal this planet and shifting those energy lines back to where they're supposed to be in the Earth. That changes the timelines, and that's how you guys have the Mandela effect, and some of you remember those. And you remember facts that are different than they are currently. And you're like, wait a minute, like a week ago, that was completely different than it is now. That's weird that they call that the Mandela effect, because some people remember Nelson Mandela dying back in the 1970s. And he didn't. He lived and he got out of prison and he became the president of South Africa. Some people remember Nelson Mandela dying. A large amount of people on the earth, not connected with one another worldwide, have that memory. And they're like, no, he died in like 1974 or whenever that was, right? I'm not one of those people that actually had that memory. I knew that he was alive. Stephen Biko, which those people who thought Nelson Mandela died don't even know who Stephen Biko is. Stephen Biko was the guy who was actually in charge of that group, and Nelson Mandela was his right-hand man. Stephen Biko was hung in his cell like Epstein, where they found him hung and 2 inept guards asleep at the time with the cameras that were faulty. Weird that was the exact same thing that happened 70 years later. And literally they found him dead, and only he used his shoelaces. So they don't give you shoelaces in prisons anymore. He used his shoelaces and hung himself. I think that's what they said, but who knows if you look it up, and there might be sheets again like Epstein. So there's some people remember that differently. So they call it the Mandela effect because of that. And there are many other examples of that. And so everyone goes, no, it's CERN and it's got to be the bad guys. And they're the ones that are doing it. Those guys are shitting themselves. Pardon my American. Those guys are literally crapping themselves because they don't know what's causing it. And they're not sure if it, and everybody goes, no, it's the evil people. And they're trying to do time travel stuff and they're causing these time dilations. I'm telling you right now, the governments around the world do not know what's causing it because most of the time they can't sense it. And let me explain that. Okay, so there is a group of people who are here to help, wanderers who are here to help, who are fixing these ley lines. And those of you who are in Europe hate it when we Americans use that term for the energy lines, the grid of the planet. So I apologize if I've offended anyone, because just using my words here in America, I'm offending half the population speaking now, right? And I'm offending all of science currently by speaking the way I'm speaking. So as we shift the ley lines, as we shift the energy grid of this earth back to where it's supposed to, as we heal the planet, it's moving back upright, and that's changing the harmonic resonance, and that changes timelines, and it actually shifts timelines, and things change. Subtle things, little small things change, and they call it the Mandela effect. So some of us do that, and we also do it when we're sleeping. When you go to sleep, your physical body sleeps, your spirit does not rest, doesn't need it, doesn't need sleep. Okay, you don't just sit there and turn off like a computer. Okay, oh no, of course not, because I dream. That's stuff that's happening to you in less than a millisecond. Look into rapid eye movement and how long a dream takes to actually unfold that they have figured out in your brain. So usually when you dream, it's usually for a second, maybe a half second, and then you'll wake up, and it could be a month that you just had a dream of. And it literally, if somebody was hooked up diodes to your brain, that entire dream, because you're operating outside of time, that entire dream took less than a nanosecond. And most of the dreams that you remember, unless you wake up and you look at the time and it's 3 a.m., most of them, remember, the dreams that you have are just before you actually wake up in the morning. And then you wake up and it's, oh, the alarm's going to go off 10 minutes, or I might as well get up anyways. But if you have them during the course of the night, that's literally just that moment. That is like a half a second or less. 1/10 of a second, 1/2 of a second. What are you doing for the other 8 hours, 7 hours and 59 minutes and 45 seconds? Okay. You're not just turned off. You don't turn off. You don't need to hibernate. Your body does. You go somewhere else. You just don't remember it when you wake up. Sometimes you have a little bit of memory caps where you go, wait a minute, that was weird because I was at this place where I was talking to somebody and it was very important. And it was this, I was inside somewhere. And usually people who remember that, I say that's the Akashic record of halls of Amente. Okay. So, yeah, no, the planet's off, not 23 degrees. It's off. Now you got me messed up. It's off. Not 23 degrees. It's off. Not much. It's off like 11.5 or 12.5 degrees. Right. As Cassie said, Leo had something about it was 23 degrees. I think that's what you're asking about, Cassie, as you're referring to that. It's actually 12.5. It's actually, I think it's 12.35 now. I'll have to look it up. I used to track it, because I talked about it a lot more in the past than I didn't talk about it a lot on the Law of One. But if you watch any of the stuff that I've done for Earth Day and things like that, and other programs where I'm talking about the aliens and the Breakaway Society and stuff like that, you'll hear me talking more about that. But yeah, I'll have to look it up. So I don't know exactly right now what it exactly is. And it's not the Schumann resonance, because some people might say Schumann resonance. So Cassie says, oh my God, it's too funny. Leo is now talking about doing that in our sleep. And I know he didn't see my comment. No, I didn't. That's funny because your comment just popped up. So you must've made a comment about that. Oh, right. Here's the comment. I was actually working on the energy lines in my sleep, right? I had no idea. My husband told me about it. And so I asked Leo, yeah, I didn't know that you had said that. That's funny because I was bringing that up because some of us actually do that. So Cassie literally was told me about it. I hope you're okay with that because you brought it up on the air, where she was asleep and she was actually moving her hands and doing things with her hands. Her husband saw her physically doing that. And so as it turned out, I was able to tell her, well, what you were doing was you were working with energy, and you were literally had projected your spirit, your soul was in the earth, fixing the ley lines and healing that energy and moving them slowly back into place, recalibrating the harmonic resonance of the earth. And there's a lot of us that do that around the world. And some people have memory of actually doing it. And some people have memory of doing it awake, and they're constantly doing it on purpose. They go to Stonehenge. I'm a Druid. I have the title. I have a Merlin title. I'm a Merlin. Some of the Druids and the Wiccans, and they have all wanted me to join their covens, but I never did, to become a priest, a Wiccan priest. But I didn't want to do that because I didn't want to join their covens because they were always, oh, it's our secret book and nobody gets to know that. We're wanting to share for the whole world and save the world, but we can't have anybody having our secret spells and incantations because we're going to be the one that's going to take credit. Ego takes over even in these covens around the world. Religions around the world. That's why I say religion recruits you and spirituality waits for you to find it. So literally there's a group of people worldwide who are actually fixing and helping and putting energy. And some people don't realize what they're doing, but they're also putting energy into the earth to heal Mother Gaia and to right things. And what's happening is the Earth is moving back on up to 0 point. And when that happens, the temperate zones will be the temperate zones. So what'll happen is you'll have ice and snow at the poles, bottom and top, and then you'll have the equator being warm. So you won't have spring, summer, winter, fall as much, because we are still in elliptical orbit. So you will still have some of that, but it won't be as pronounced as it is now. And you won't have the tides having to flow the way they were, because there is no reason for that when the planet is upright. So the tides then move, but it's generated by the spin of the Earth itself, and we don't need the gravitational pull of the moon to help our tides. So you're not going to have this major tides going in and out as much as you have now, because we won't need it. So it's going to change the face of the Earth, but it's not going to be worse, because you're still going to have rain. You're still going to have this kind of stuff, but you're not going to have the extremes where you're going to have snow going so far south or so far north. It's going to be a distance thing away from sea level still. So you're going to have, you're still going to have storms moving through the atmosphere, right? So you're going to still have weather. Weather's not going to stop, but the ecosystem isn't going to be 100% the way it is currently, because the moon will eventually settle to where it's going to be far less. So you're still going to have tides, but it's going to be far less, because it's going to be further out, and it's going to be less need for the moon and the tides because of the planet being upright. Science knows this to be a fact. This is not something that's a theory that I made up or anybody else that's on the fringe. Science knows this to be absolutely true. And you can look that up. That's not a joke. In fact, I say that you should look that up so that you guys, don't believe a word I say. I always tell everybody that. Okay, so there are some people that are utilizing this. Again, your focus determines what you're doing, and these grid lines on the planet are important for the health of the planet. And that is a resonance that resonates in all of us and everything, because we're all one. We all have a vibration. And when the harmonic resonance is proper for the Earth, then the people here can be more healthy and can ascend properly. Okay, that's why as we fell, the planet is off kilter, and it's now righting itself. And if you look at the pendulum, go back just 2,000 years ago, or almost 2,000 years, in 2034, 2037, it'll be 2,000 years since Jesus was born, right? So actually, it won't be his 2000th anniversary of his death, because he was 33 when he died. So it'll be no, because that is right. So if he was born in the year 4, because he wasn't born in 0, everyone thinks that he was, because Anno Domini means in the year of our Lord. So they all think that Jesus was born at 0, but he wasn't. You can look that up too. He was born about the year 4. So 33 years from that is 2037. So in 2037, it's going to be 2,000 years since Jesus was crucified. In that 2,000-year time period, look at the way things were back then, just 2,000 years ago, and how bad they were on this planet to now. And then just look back in time to the 1960s, 60 years ago, in whatever you are living, wherever country you're living, and look at 60 years ago and everything that has happened in that 60-year time period. That's just the 60 years. And a lot has changed. So there's more female rights, there's more rights for everybody, and then of course they're trying to take all that away. And COVID was one of their plans to lock down everybody and make everybody a communist country, to try and go back to kingdoms and get rid of this illusion of freedom that they call illusion, because they pretend that it doesn't really exist. We're letting you think you're free, and we can take it from you whenever we want to. If they could take it from us, they already would have. They thought they could get away with taking it, they would have. And they attempted that during COVID. And now they're not wanting to give back anything they took from us. And they're fighting for their lives to keep a hold of every bit of power that they got for themselves during COVID. And no matter where you are in the country, in the world, no matter what country that you're in, no matter what political party you associate with, you know that to be true. 100%. You know that to be true. Whether you want to admit that to yourself, it doesn't matter to me. Because I know, and everyone else does, that it is true. They tried to take total domination and power away from everybody, and now they're not willing to give it back. Even though the pandemic has been over for 150,000 years, it's already been over, and they keep trying to wind up a new one. There's a new one coming. There's a new one for quademic, pandemic, triple-demic. It's a new one. And then there's these variants for the first time in history. All of a sudden, variants are ganging up together and becoming a new variant, a new sub-variant. It's a combination of two. When did that happen in nature ever before COVID? but COVID wasn't designed by anybody. I'm not going to talk anymore about that. I'm going to get me kicked off the air. Okay, so 23.5. It could be. Cassie said, I swear, I remember Leo saying it's 23.5. It could be. Like I said, Cassie, it's been a couple of years since I've even thought about it. So it could be 23, but 23 seems to be a pretty. It probably is. Right, I'll have to look that up. Google that. I'll bet it is 23.5, which is scary because it's further off than I would want it. Maybe I'm being optimistic and trying to say it's only off by 11 or 12 degrees. Maybe I'll let Ra play and I'll look it up and see what the planet tilt is. But somebody can Google that. What is the tilt of the Earth currently off of 0 degrees upright? And it'll say that, right? So, right, maybe Reese knows. Reese, do you know? He said it's 23rd, baby, over here. I'm going to look it up. So I'm going to let Raw talk, and I'm going to Google that real quick and see if I can figure that out. It could be 23.5 degrees. I would like to think that it's not. It's more like 12 or 11.5 degrees, because then that way I know that it's not off that much, and we don't have as much to fix. But we fixed it a lot just in the last 60 years is my point. Let's continue.
The ritual will always end by the grounding of this energy in praise and thanksgiving and the release of this energy into the planetary whole. 50.10 Questioner. I know of people who have been recently trained in meditation, who after a very short period of intense meditation, a couple of days or so, are able to cause the action at a distance effect on metal, bending it. It's my understanding that they are wearing a pyramid-shaped wire on their heads while doing this. I was invited to one of the meditation sessions a couple of years ago, but I couldn't get there. Could you comment on this process, and if they are accomplishing anything of value or not? Ra, I am Ra. No. Please ask one more full query at this working. 50.11 Questioner, could you give me more information on the energy fields of the body as relates to the right and left brain, and if this is somehow related to the pyramid shape as far as energy focusing goes? I am a little lost at exactly how to get into this line of questioning, so I will ask that question. Ra, I am Ra. We are similarly at a loss at this line of answering. We may say that the pyramid shape is but one which focuses the INS.
Yeah, Cassie, you were absolutely right. It is 23. It's 23.44. Used to be 23.5. So literally in the last 2 years or 3 years, it's gone from 23.5 to 23.44. So it's literally already moving, but it is 23 degrees off, right? Cody, I see you on YouTube over there saying hello, right? That's why I'm a witch. She says, I love teaching. Yeah, right. So so I looked it up, and it literally says, it popped up and it said that it's actually, and now of course that I'm wanting to focus on that, I saw it pop up on the screen, and then it's just giving me like all these 360 degrees. And like, why did that, when I first looked at it, did it tell me that exactly what the degrees were off? So I saw it for a second, and then it went off the screen. I'll have to locate it, but it did say 23.44 degrees. So it used to be 23.5 degrees. It was far worse than that 2,000 years ago than it is currently. So Cassie, you're right. I was being optimistic and trying to say, no, it must be like 12 degrees. So it is. So the Earth is tilted 23.44 degrees off of dead center upright. And because of that, it is off kilter, and the energy is not flowing properly the way it's supposed to. All right, let's continue with Ra, since I went past that now, and he's talking about something else.
Tearemings of energy for use by entities which may become aware of these INS tearemings. We may say further that the shape of your physical brain is not significant as a shape for concentrating INS tearemings of energy. Please ask more specifically, if you may, that information you seek. 50.12 Questioner, each of us feel, in meditation, energy on the head in various places. Could you tell me what this is, and what it signifies, and what the various places that we feel it signify? Ra, I am Ra. Forgetting the pyramid will be of aid to you in the study of these experiences. The INS tearemings of energy are felt by the energy centers which need, and are prepared for, activation. Thus those who feel the stimulation at violet ray level are getting just that. Those feeling it within the forehead between the brows are experiencing indigo ray and so forth. Those experiencing tinglings and visual images are having some blockage in the energy center being activated, and thus the electrical body spreads this energy out and its effect is diffused. Those not truly sincerely requesting this energy may yet feel it if the entities are not well trained in psychic defense. Those not desirous of experiencing these sensations and activations and changes even upon the subconscious level will not experience anything due to their abilities at defense and armoring against change. 50.13 Questioner. Right now I'm getting two feelings simultaneously. Is this normal to get two at once? Ra. I am Ra. The most normal for the adept is the following: the indigo stimulation activating that great gateway into healing, magical work, prayerful attention, and the radiance of being, and the stimulation of the violet ray, which is the spiritual giving and taking from end to creator, from creator to creator. This is a desirable configuration. Is there a brief query before we leave this instrument? 50.14 Questioner. Is there anything that we can do to make the instrument more comfortable or improve the contact? Ra. I am Ra. You are conscientious and your alignments are careful. It would be well to take care that this instrument's neck is placed carefully upon its support. I am Ra. I leave you, my friends, in the love and the light of the one infinite creator. Go forth, then, rejoicing in the power and in the peace of the one infinite creator. Adonai.
Okay, pardon me. All right, let me close this window out and I'll open the next session here and we'll go ahead and I'll share that and we'll get that going, okay?
May 13th.
Okay, hold on. Let me share this now. And then we'll just move on to the next session, which is May 13th, right? Okay, and then let me put myself back up in full screen. All right, so let me go ahead and we'll start the next session. You guys do a sound check. You guys let me know if you can hear it, right? Tell me in the chat whether you can hear it, okay? And then we'll continue.
May 13th, 1981. 51.0 Ra. I am Ra. I greet you in the love and in the light of the one infinite creator. We communicate now. 51.1 Questioner. As we begin Book 3 of the Law of One, there are a couple of questions. One of fairly non-transient importance and one which I consider to be a bit transient that I feel obligated to ask because of communication with others. The first is just clearing up final points about harvest for our friend Name. And I was wondering if there is a supervision over the harvest, and if so, why this supervision is necessary and how it works, since an entity's harvest.
To answer that, Denise, see, I can see that chat better over here without my glasses. Denise asked the question, what did he mean from creator to creator? Isn't there only one creator? What his reference here is to us as a sub-creator. There is only one creator because there is only one creator of the universe. There is only one universe. And all of us are part of that. But we are all individuals, an individual experience, an experiencer. But the human condition, and if you read, I don't remember which scroll it is, one of the Dead Sea Scrolls, it might be the Book of Truth, the Scroll of Truth. In there, it talks about the human condition and that the human beings have an immortal ability, an indestructible ability, which means immortal. And that ability is one, that we are immortal, our souls, but that we have the ability to create. So in that reference, when Ra was saying from creator to creator, literally meaning individuals, us, a soul. And from the perspective of Ra being a hive mind complex, when you become a hive mind complex, you become one entity, one creator, as one hive mind complex totality. And there's still other hive mind complexes at that level. So you go from being an individual down here, and you're first self-aware. And as we start moving from the third dimension into the fourth and into the fifth, here is when you start learning that we are a collective. And so you get that concept in your mind, you get that concept and you start reaching out to when you love someone or you trust someone and you're very close to them, your family members, a twin flame, someone who is your spouse in some way. You start answering each other's sentences, finishing each other's sentences, answering each other's questions. You get this communicative ability where you're so trusting with each other that you can look at each other and just know what the other one's thinking, because you're starting to mind meld, as the Vulcans would say in Star Trek. You're starting to open yourself up and allow that subconscious or superconscious thought process to go back and forth between you. And when you love somebody, then you feel that that openness between each other even more. And if you're only in love with yourself, you don't feel that, but there's other versions of that they co-opt and cooperate with one another, and then you evolve into a hive mind complex, and then that hive mind complex starts to evolve with other hive mind complexes in a sea of people like we have here. But instead of being one individual, you're millions that make up one individual, and eventually that millions that make up that individual goes away, and you're just one individual amongst millions of other one individuals that used to be millions, if not billions or trillions of individual souls who became that. And then you keep moving up until you go back to the creator. So when he was talking about that from creator to creator, literally explaining and talking about that, there was referencing us as individuals here working and working together and transferring energy or differences from creator to creator, because we're all in a different place in our development and in our development of our own skills and the realization of infinity and creation. So that's all going to be an individual basis, always for individuality. It's always going to be an individual basis for everything, right? Rick says, I've been thinking that there is no creator because see how was the creator created? I think it's all collective energy involving. Well, I mean, it is and it's not. You're absolutely right. So, right. What came first, the chicken or the egg? You can't have an egg without a chicken, but you can't have a chicken without an egg. So what came first? So the creator, who created the creator, right? So if the creator is something, did the creator create itself? Well, there are scrolls, if you read, that say both, that there was the firmament created the creator, and that the firmament was just nothing of like a primordial ooze in the consciousness of the universe, and that the creator evolved out of that. And then you have that the creator it came into being on its own. But you're right. So that's why if you watch that video, you may not have had time to do that. The interview with Terrence Howard on the Joe Rogan podcast from a week ago now, almost 6 days ago now. Which has like, what is it, 6 million or 13 million views or something like that. Anyway, literally, he actually talks about that. What came first, the chicken or the egg? You can't have a chicken without the egg, and you can't have an egg without a chicken. So the creator of the universe, how would that? But he actually says this, and I've said this on my own, and he actually said, looking at the universe, it's possible that all of what we think is this entire universe and everything that's going on may in fact be a single cell in a much, much, much larger billions of cells inside of some living thing. That literally our universe, the entire universe, could be one single cell in the mind of the creator. And when people say, well, that's just impossible. Okay, I have the pictures that I show you that science has taken pictures of a human brain cell, one brain cell. And it's a radial image of that. The same radial image of this universe is identical to that brain cell, except it's a grander scale. So there's more ganglia cells and neural pathways in that of the universe, but they're identical, which would suggest that our brain cell, if it's a cell that works in our brain, that makes our brain work, the universe that we're in currently is a brain cell. Science knows this. You can look that up. Watch the beginning of any of my podcasts on an MP4 file podcast and watch my opening 1 minute and 17 second song and look at the images. And one of the images that's in there is those side-by-side images of a brain cell in the universe. And then if you want more examples, go to any of the platforms, Instagram, YouTube, Facebook, Twitter, and look at my reel, short, whatever you want to call them. Look at those and scroll down until you find one, because there's one that has all images, and it has like 5 or 6 images of galaxies and in the brain cell the universe in the brain cell, and it shows you, and they all have the same neural pathways. And the science knows there's a neural network that is what they called the Force in the Star Wars Jedi saga, which is identical, mind you, to the Tree of Life by the Vikings, the Japanese, the Chinese, the Greeks, the Romans, and the Egyptians, and which is identical to our neural network in our body. And when you look at all of the trees of life, they have 10 branches of spheres. We have 7 major arcana. But if you look at our tree of life, which is our nervous system and the human body, and you count the organs that are attached to the neural network that is our tree of life, in our body, there are 10 organs. Okay? There are 10 organs: eyes, nose, mouth, lungs, heart, liver, all these, including your testicles or your whatever your organs are, female genitalia or male genitalia. And you have 2 sets of those, positive and negative, masculine and feminine, kundalini energies. So I show that again in my reels to where I put those together. And that one literally starts out with the human condition and then moves into the different trees of life. And it shows you the light and dark, cold and hot, animals, different animals, winter animals, summer animals on the earth. And the earth has 2 halves, right? And you have the northern and southern hemisphere, and they go through all of that same thing, okay? And all these trees of life representations from around the world and all these different religions, they all knew the same knowledge. I talk about that in my book, okay? So to get back on point with Rick, we don't know. We can't fathom down here the possibility of how the creator came into being yet. We're too far down on the run. We're just starting to ponder this stuff. So it's not wrong of you to think that, Rick, at all. So I'm not trying to say, I got to correct Rick and tell him what the right thought is, because I don't know that answer. I can't describe it to you. I can try to describe what it looks like when I look there, but there's no words. I cannot put into words here. If I could mind meld with you and make you feel and see what I can feel and see, you'd be like, whoa. And you'd probably start crying, because that's usually what happens. You've seen Jacqueline when I've had her on, or you've been watching her on her own thing. When she expands her consciousness and looks to that place, she starts crying, not out of sadness, but out of absolute wonder of how beautiful that is. So we don't know the answer to that. We can only postulate that and come up with theories, but we can never prove that. We can't until we return back to source. So only when you return back to the creator and become one with the creator are you going to know. And does the creator know the answer to that question? The creator of the universe may be a single cell and the collective consciousness of that single cell, and not know that it is separate from other cells. So we don't know the answer to that and can't. So that could go on infinitive. That's why it's infinity. Because that, who knows how far that goes on? Because if we're in fact inside one single cell, and in that cell is the entire known universe, and there's other universes and they're all single cells, that means you have to expand up past the single cell to start moving into a reality to where you can see what you are inside of. Whether it's a finger, a shoulder, a brain, an eyeball, we have no idea what we're inside of. We could be inside of a rock. We can be inside of a tree. We don't know. So what does that become? And then is that, again, this is why in Men in Black, in that series, throughout that, the reoccurring theme was size doesn't matter. There could be a galaxy inside of a marble. And then they're inside they open up a locker in the station, and there's an entire world inside that locker. And then at the end of that movie, his character Jay is talking about that, and he says, "You humans, you never want to learn." And he walks over and kicks open a door that says, "Never open, keep it closed." And you realize they're inside of a locker from another reality that is even bigger than them, and that was meant to blow your mind. Okay, so literally inside of here on Earth, there was the galaxy is on Orion's belt. Inside of a marble is an entire galaxy, like our Milky Way galaxy, right? You humans, you think you don't understand spatial differences. And then he realizes that he's on the outside and inside of a locker is an entire universe. And then he realizes that he's no different than that. So that's supposed to expand your consciousness to the idea of infinity going in both directions. So the writers of that did that on purpose for that. Okay. Yes. Yeah. I know you guys are talking about Terrence Howard. Yeah. I am trying to get a hold of Joe Rogan and specifically Terrence Howard. And I will eventually. I know that. But I'm trying to put the ball in motion and I'm manifesting that to talk to Terrence Howard because of what I'm writing in my book is, and what I know, if you guys have heard me talk about, if you any of you that have followed me for a few years, you know what I have talked about as far as physics and the universe. And Terrence Howard literally was saying the same thing. So I know that Terrence is awake. I just don't know how awake he is. He remembers being in the womb. So I know what's on that video. In that interview. And if you're out there listening to my voice and you don't know what I'm talking about, Terrence Howard, who was one of the stars that was in the television show Empire, an actor, knew all of this stuff his entire life. He remembers being in the womb. He remembers going through the birth canal and being birthed into this planet. And so I don't know exactly because I haven't talked to him, so I don't know how far that goes. I don't know how much he remembers. He may be completely unveiled. And coming forward till now, he has decided in the past 10 or 15 years or so that he's been working behind the scenes while acting. And then more so during COVID because he lost a lot of jobs. He talks about that on the show because he wouldn't get the shot. He talked about that in the interview. So during that time when he wasn't working because of COVID and everybody was locked down, he was working on his physics stuff because of what he knows. And he's not making anything up. You have to remember, guys, I was going to be a physicist, and I have two nephews that are doing this as well. And I haven't talked to them about this yet, but I want to. I'm going to send the link to the youngest nephew, Sage, who's just now going to be going to Sac State over here in the fall, and his brother's already graduated from over here at Stanford University here in California, which is like MIT for the West Coast. And so I don't know what he's doing for a living, but I'm sure he's going to go to work for the federal government. Go to work for NASA or somebody else, Skunk Works or somebody, because he is in service to self more than his younger brother is. So but I got to talk to those guys about what Terrence Howard was talking about, because if you're a physicist and you know physics in the world and what's going on, you actually got what Terrence Howard said completely different. And that's why Joe Rogan was like, bro, this is going to revolutionize the world. And he's like, yeah, and that's why they don't want anybody to know what I'm talking about. And they're going to take shots at me. And he knows that. Okay, so let's continue. So I am going to be eventually getting in contact with him. Right now, I'm putting that out to the universe that I need to talk to him because I want to find out whether he's unveiled, how much he remembers, and whether he knows exactly why he's here. I think he does, but he's not saying it out loud because you don't just throw that out there, right? So at some point, I will be sitting down with him and having a conversation with him because I really want to know how much he's unveiled. There's other people in the world. Like I still haven't talked to my nephew who remembers being an Aztec warrior. He's really has a lot of his lifetime's memory. Not I think this, but I remember being this, and I still haven't been able to get him to sit down to talk to him about that. So there's people out there in the world who, like me, keep that hidden from the world because it sounds crazy and people think we're nuts. Even now, when I start talking about it, people go, that guy's crazy. Okay, let's continue with Rob. Okay. It's so relieving to hear the truth from Terrence. Yes, I agree. Reese just said that. Reese Pope said that over in Australia. Absolutely. To hear him say what he's saying, and then to having him making the little models of the opening up of the flower of life, which they didn't do properly. And his explanation of the earth, they thought the earth was flat. So everything is a two-dimensional rendering of a 3D or 4D specifically. And he talked about that, of a 4D item that for 6,000 years, they've been looking at the world as if it was flat. So flat earthers are like, they've been lying to us about the world not being flat. The truth is, they've thought the world and all of science is based on the world is actually flat to this day, even though science is like the world's not flat and it's a sphere and the universe is more spherical than it is flat. And everyone, the flat earthers are like, nope, they're lying about that. It's truly flat. The truth is, and you flat earthers are going to hate this, so therefore you're going to say that Terrence Howard made it all up, is that he knows that our physics and our mathematical system is wrong because it's based on a 6,500-year-old Pythagorean ideology that the Greeks had when they believed that the earth was flat. And they were murdering people for saying that the earth wasn't flat up until 800 years ago. And now people that are claiming the earth is flat is saying that for the last 800 years, they've just been lying about that. And that, well, there's no fire in space, so rockets don't work. Have you ever actually looked at what they use the rocket engine to leave our atmosphere? When they hit the ionosphere, they start using oxygen because when they leave where there is gas here, it won't burn. So in space, they use oxygen as fuel. Psst, 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 psst. Okay? Because they know that there's not enough oxygen in space to burn. So how can you claim that the earth is flat because fire doesn't work in space? Well, then how did that space shuttle burn up? Well, it burned up on re-entry. There was a damaged tile from takeoff that they didn't die from when they were up in space for the whole time they were up there. When they came back into Earth's atmosphere and they were going through the ionosphere, picking up speed coming through the ionosphere as they were basically slowing down, the friction caused the air to impact against the bottom of the space shuttle, and that created the air to turn into molten plasma. And that plasma, because it was there and it was hot and it was now burning because they were entering the Earth's atmosphere, then it went through the tile that was broken and burned the inside of the thing, and it fell apart and everybody died and it crashed. Okay, but the whole time they were in space with a hole in it that wasn't completely into the intersection, inside to where the gas in their oxygen leaked out, but then it couldn't withstand re-entry because the tile was broken and gone. Okay, so when fire was then capable again, there was plasma burning on the bottom, which well, that must have been fake too. So what did they do? They went up into space, and when they came back, somebody decided to shoot them down with a missile. Or they were never in space and they were just flying around and somebody shot them down so that it looked like that they came back and it burned up, and it's because the earth was actually flat and they were just flying in circles up in the air and nobody could see that on any radar or anything. Weird how our machines all of a sudden don't work either because of the firmament. And when you're trying to look out in space with a telescope, what you're actually seeing is the light is going up and turning, and you're actually seeing the ground and thinking you're seeing space. I mean, if you're an adult, that whole theory of flat earth doesn't work because it just can't, right? So how can I look at a telescope and see the moon if the moon's flat too? How come it appears to not be flat to us? Oh, because the moon's actually inside okay, so all the stars that are up there, are those pinholes in the veil of night? Because that's what they said 6,000 years ago. That it was just this curtain that was draped over the top of the planet so that we thought it was nighttime. So somebody, God, is sitting up on top of us, above us, and he takes this curtain, this black cloth, and he hangs it over the top of us at night to make the sun go out, and then pulls it off of us in the daytime for the sun to come back out. Okay, so he puts something in between us. I mean, you're going to have to go back to that in the beliefs. Now you have to believe there's an invisible man in space that is God, that is covering the earth in darkness and then letting it light up again. Or you have to go to the little bit more modern theory of 6,495 years ago, when you had the gods in the air and that the sun was alive and it was chasing the moon across the sky in front of us. And the moon would hide behind the horizon, and the sun would be chased now by the moon from the other side, and it would run and hide from the moon, and that's how we had darkness. So then you got to believe that. I mean, think about that. So Earth is immobile. It's immobile, and things are just hanging in the air for no weird reason, and they're chasing each other around because you're in a playpen and you're looking up and your parents turned on a little button and it's moving around, and that's how everything's moving around in the sky. Right. So that's what a child thinks in their little universe, that's what's going on when they're in a playpen. Their parents are just, if their parents told them that that's how the universe worked, they would believe that because that's what they saw when they were a little baby. So flat earth only works if you are a little baby and you go, well, that's what my parents saw. But you don't know that the parents hung it up on top of and attached it to the edge of the bed that you can't see because you don't know the concept of you're in a playpen. You don't realize that this netting around you right here isn't isn't the end of your universe and that you can't get out of it. You don't realize that until you start trying it and figure out how you can climb over it. Then you realize, wait, all that stuff I see out there is real and I can go there. All right, let's continue.
Ability is the violet ray. Is it necessary for entities to supervise the harvest, or is it automatic?
Right, Cassie said God's playing peekaboo with us. Yeah, right? Okay, let's continue.
Could you answer this, please? Ra, I am Ra. In time of harvest there are always harvesters. The fruit is formed as it will be, but there is some supervision necessary to ensure that this bounty is placed as it should be without the bruise or the blemish. There are those of 3 levels watching over harvest. The first level is planetary and that which may be called angelic. This type of guardian.
Right, Reese says it's funny, like with Jehovah's Witnesses, when you push the Bible and you correct, when they push the Bible and you correct them, they get upset when you question their existence, right? Laugh out loud, peekaboo, laugh out loud. So yeah, I mean, that's the truth. And that's usually how you can tell when people, when they subconsciously or even consciously know that what they're trying to push on you isn't legitimate. If somebody gets mad at you when you say something, right, unless they're with somebody that gets really annoyed with people who say that and then they get angry that way. But most of the time that's what happens. That's why if you like, okay, for instance, the progressives that are trying to take over the earth right now, if you question what they say, they get mad at you and try to shut you up, try to stifle you by making fun of you, trying to, if you have something like a star, a movie star, or an actor, or a singer, or you have a podcast, they try to go to your sponsors and dox your sponsors and make them feel guilty and or make them get behind them and stop paying for them and pull all your ads and to make you pay for daring to question their authority. Think about that. That's what that's what they're used to doing. Socrates, 4,500 years ago, said the earth is not flat, it's round. And they put him on trial and convicted him to death and made him drink poison and die. Okay? So that's what they used to do all the way up to not very long ago. If you went against what they said reality was, they would kill you for it. Nope, sorry, now we have to kill you. Why? Because we have to shut you up. What's going to happen is other people are going to catch on. That's why if you watch the original movie of Stargate, literally the theory is that these fake gods were here. The gods of Egypt were actually symbiotic parasites that would burrow into a human stomach and then possess you from within and live inside your stomach as a worm, it lives inside your stomach as the host, and they take control of your mind. And they literally, Ra was supposedly a god, and it was actually an alien. And the uprising that happened here on Earth was that they started not believing that these aliens were gods. And they realized they could kill them. So they left. And when they left, the people here won their freedom and buried the Stargates so they couldn't return. Come forward in time to 3,500 years later, supposed to be in the modern time, but it was back in the 90s, I believe. They found in 1948, during that same time period, found one of these things, but couldn't figure out how to open it. So come forward into time, they were still trying to figure it out. The government was figuring out Dr. Daniel Jackson, who was in fact ancient, a person that studied ancient and understood ancient Egyptian culture and language, was able to decipher and identify symbols on the Stargate, and they were able to then turn on the Stargate, and it opened up, and they went to the other side. And it went to a place called Abydos, which is a name of a place here in this country, not in this country, in Egypt. Abydos in Africa. Around the world, there's a couple of different Abydoses. So they went to Abydos, and there the people, writing was illegal, so you couldn't learn how to read or write, right? And then you couldn't talk about certain things. It was forbidden, just the way it was in Egypt 5,000 years ago. And they show up with all our modern weapons, and our military go there. And at the time, Colonel O'Neill, goes there with Daniel Jackson and a group of guys. And then Ra shows up there in his spaceship. And they don't look at Ra. O'Neill was famous for not seeing them as gods, for seeing them as thugs, no different than a human thug, somebody on the planet. He was famous for when they did the television series. He was famous for antagonizing them and being that way and looking at them like that. So my whole point of this is now Ra has the same dilemma. Ra remembers, because Ra is still the same alien, still alive 5,000 years later, that if he allows these humans, they're going to infect all of the people of Abydos with the same disease of knowledge that happened on Earth. So now he has to kill all the people from Earth, and now he knows that the Stargate is open, and he tries to send their bomb back with some naquita to blow up Earth and to seal it. And then he's going to kill everybody in the village that had any knowledge of these people who came through. They have to eradicate all of that knowledge. Humans act that exact same way. In the south of France, Mary Magdalene showed up in the south of France. This is in history. You can look it up. The people in the south of France will tell you this. And they still worship her today. And they have a skull of a human female that they claim was Mary Magdalene's skull, by the way. And they parade it around the south of France every year in a ceremony. And the people that were living in the south of France at the time, not too long after, a generation or two after, in the 1500s, so it was a few generations after Mary died, they started the religion based on Jesus's religion that was there, and they became very powerful. And they said the Pope in Rome is wrong. They're evil people in charge of that church. They're not teaching the way Jesus was teaching. We're teaching still in the tradition that Mary brought with her when she came from the Holy Land over here. So the Pope in Rome sent his knights to the south of France, and they murdered 2.5 million people. The population of France at the time was only about 4.5 million people. So they literally killed almost half the population of France to eradicate that religion and anyone who knew anything about it. Do you understand that? So literally, that was in the 1500s. So literally, that's been going on this earth up to probably the 1800s and even beyond that. Okay. And some of you don't know this, but in the 90s, when Bill Clinton was in office, they were trying to murder off 3/4 of the population of this earth. They were going to nuke the earth and cull the planet. And they were about to do it. Some of you, I'm going to lose some of you now. You're going to get mad at me and say he's crazy. He's making shit up. History will bear this out. They were going to nuke the planet, and they have people already living underground. There's 188 military bases owned by the federal government of the United States of America alone, underground, deep underground, okay, around the world. So there's more than that by all the governments of this earth underground. They were all going to live underground. They were going to destroy the topside population. They were trying to do that. And they were trying to kill people off. And weirdly, if you think back, if you're alive enough to know from, say, 1990 till now, and you have memory, so you weren't like 1 year old in 1990, you have memory of that. We had the Cold War going on around the world, especially if you're in the United States or in Europe. The Cold War going on from the 1950s all the way up through, including now. We still kind of have a Cold War with China and with Russia. And literally, you heard all this talk about nuclear disarmament and all this stuff going on all the way up until 1994, and then it just disappeared and no one spoke about it anymore until about 2011 and 2012. Why? No one did it go out of phase? We still had nuclear power everywhere on the planet, right? So there was still a threat of nuclear war, right? But how come that it was disappeared and no one was talking about it for almost 20 years? For about 20 years. Why? What happened? Say 1994 to 2012. So 2004 would have been 10 years, and then 4 to 12 is another 8 years. So literally for almost 20 years, you didn't hear about nuclear weapons or the threat of nuclear war anywhere on the earth. If you're alive today and you were alive in that time period, you know what I'm talking about. Why is that? I know why the answer to that. The answer to that question is because they were going to use their nuclear weapons and start a nuclear war and devastate the top side of the earth to lower the population, because there was too many people like me that are awake on this earth that are teaching what we're teaching today. And they knew that exponentially, they did the math, how things were going to progress and change between 1994 and say today, 2024. They knew how much that with their way of life was going to start going away, and they were fighting for their lives to keep the status quo. So what changed? What changed was people from within spaceships, not indigenous to the world that we live on, showed up around the world and neutralized, rendered every nuclear weapon owned by every human being on the earth, rendered them inert, melted them down to nothing but basically lead, paperweights. Gone. No nuclear weapons anywhere on the face of this earth. And it took them until 2012 or so to remine, refine, and remake nuclear weapons and start making an arsenal back in around the world, to the point where they had weapons again of mass destruction. Some of you don't want to believe that. Some of you aren't going, you're going to think that I'm lying and making that up. That I'm crazy, right? Denise said, you're crazy. You're making things up, right? I know, right? Because some people are thinking that, Denise, honestly. Some people are, if they're hearing me right now for the first time, they're going to go, you're just insane, bro. I'm out. That's okay, because those people are nowhere near awake enough to realize what's actually happening. Hence the reason my book is titled The Reality About Reality, Returning to the Old Ways. So that actually happened. So you guys need to realize out there in the world, if you're hearing my voice, that there is a group of people that are here to protect this planet, that have quarantined this solar system, that are not going to allow the evil people to destroy the place. They tried again with COVID. Didn't work. Why? There's another story behind that. But if you already tuned me out a couple of seconds ago because I was telling you about the nuclear thing going on, let's come forward in time. Okay, let's come forward in time to, do you guys remember just a few years ago when there was this North Korea was trying to get things started under Donald Trump, what was going on, and everybody was worried that they were testing nuclear weapons. And then all of a sudden over here in the United States, there was some poor schlep who was manning one of these towers of passively aggressively searching for possible nuclear weapons. And there was a launch of a nuclear weapon that was flying towards Hawaii, and he sounded the alarm, and then it disappeared off the scope and it didn't hit Hawaii, and they fired the poor schlep. At the very same time, not too long after that, less than 24 hours after that, another missile fired from the same said North Korea, or seemingly so from North Korea, and was heading for Japan. And the Japanese sounded an alarm that there might be an incoming nuclear missile, and then it disappeared off the scope. But no one got fired in America over that one, but it happened and it came from the same source. So everybody thought that Korea had fired it. I know the answer to that. The answer to that is it was a deep state, the deep state, the swamp, submarine, black ops submarine that fired that to make it appear that it was North Korea firing a nuke at America and at Japan to try and start a nuclear war. And guess what? The same people that are not from this planet stopped those weapons in midair, rendered them inert, and they fell into the ocean. And then forces went after that submarine, and the submarine had to run away. Okay? So I'm sure some more of you are going to tune out and say, that's just not true. You made that up. That's okay. If it makes you feel better and sleep at night, you can believe whatever it is that you want to believe on the planet. Doesn't change reality. It just means that your reality is not that, and you refuse to have that be a possibility in your reality. That's like saying, I don't see the sky. It's not blue. La, la, la. Nothing to see here. The sky is actually purple. Look up at the sky. No. I know it's purple. I don't have to look at the sky. You can do that for your entire entire life and tell everybody that the sky is purple. But that doesn't mean that everyone else on the planet sees a purple sky. Okay, that's the truth of that. All right. So, Cassie says, funny, Leo. Leo thought that you were serious, Denise. No, I didn't think she was serious. I thought that I knew she was funny, that she was being funny when she said that about what I said. I wasn't then attacking her thinking that I believed that. I knew when I read what she said that she was joking about that because she said, I just had to say that. I knew she was kidding about that. But I was responding to anyone who was really thinking that, who might be listening to me right now for the very first time or around the world. So you guys, if I'll apologize, Denise, if you thought like Cassie did that I thought you meant that, because I didn't think you meant that, because I know you well enough to know that you were just like, yeah, right, you are crazy, man. But some people out there who are hearing me right now think that I am, and they're probably, well, this guy's nuts, and turn me off. That's okay, right? Eventually, right? That's just like in the movie with the Underworld. In the very first movie, Underworld, where in the beginning, right, Celine is trying to tell on this guy who is supposed to be running the coven while the coven masters are hibernating, and he's trying to usurp the throne. And I got to go and wake up Marcus. I think it was Marcus that she woke up, and tell him, or whoever it was that she woke up. And he said to her, Celine, you don't know what you're talking about. Don't go down this road, because eventually you're going to agree with me. And she said, I will never agree with you. And it was your enemy. And you believed that in the movie because you were introduced to Celine. So therefore she must be the hero and he must be the antagonist. By the time the movie's over, you're not quite sure. And you start to realize, and by the time the second and the third and the fourth movie comes around, you know the answer to that. And eventually she's working with him, because she agrees with him, because he knew a knowledge that she didn't know, and she was basing her knowledge on only what she knew. And he was like, you think that you're waking up this guy who you see as a father figure to you, and you have no idea who he is to you. And you don't find that out until like the second or third movie, right? So if you never watch any of the other movies, you kind of go, wow, I think he might be right about this. But by the time you watch the second and the third and the fourth movie, you realize what's going on. And then she ends up fighting against the very people that she was trying to protect the entire time, because she realizes they're actually evil. Okay. And the entire throws your whole world upside down, because in the first movie, you think she's the good guy and she's fighting against these evil werewolves. And the evil werewolf is teamed up for some reason with this other evil vampire who's trying to control the coven and kill off the leaders who must be the good guys. And it's actually the opposite. So Leo, what do you make of Alina? You're talking about I think you're saying that wrong. Alina Dudanin, you're talking about Tuatha Dudanin. That's a long conversation, Rick. That has to do with a lot more. That has to do with a lot more spirituality. It's actually a really good Druid question. It has to do with a lot more spirituality than what we're. You know what? I'll run with that. So the Dudanin. You should look up that word. That's a Celtic word. That's why I was like, wow, you're asking that question from down under. But then again, you guys, for the most part, Australians are European descent. You guys were prisoners from frickin' England. So which means you were Irish, Welsh, Scottish, Viking, Norwegian, and all the like that they threw down there on Australia, right? Unless you're Aborigine, and you might have some Aboriginal blood DNA. But my point is that Alina Dudanin, if that's what you're referring to, okay, about the aliens. So that's what I'm getting at. So the Dudanin it comes from Tuatha Dudanin, which comes from High Brazil. If you're European, it's High Brazil, which was what they called Atlantis. So the Dudanin, the crystalline, you're talking about coming from the Australians now. You're talking about the Aborigines, right? And so their words are slightly different than the Welsh and the Gaelic. describing the same. So that's why you're saying Alina Dedanan or Danan. And that comes from the Celtic Dedanan, from the Tuatha Dedanan, which is the Aluma Elish. It's the Aluma Elish saga, and it's the gods and it's the aliens, which the Anunnaki is a evolution from. So I'm giving you a little bit of a linguistics there now. All of those are references to the same crystalline beings that used to fly crystalline ships on this earth. And that is a reference that we thought originally was the Atlanteans. But now, as we're uncovering history more, listening to the Aborigines in Australia, listening to the Celtic Aborigines that go back thousands of years, listening to the Mesopotamians, I'm getting chills talking about this, scrolls that go to Egypt and them, and now finding where we think the Stonehenge in England, in Salisbury, was created, or just outside Salisbury, and literally we now know that was created by a civilization who disappeared 75,000 years ago, roughly 74 to 77,000 years ago, when we had that destruction of the earth, and that their descendants may not have been Atlanteans who came here from Maldek when it was destroyed, or they could have been part of the same civilization. We're not 100% sure now, but we do know that those people were a global empire like our society now, a global society like our society has evolved back into, and that they did have space travel. So did they originate here on Earth, or did they come here and colonize? We don't know the answer to that. And we can speculate on that. But they are, or were, we do know. The theme that is the same is that ancient aliens theme that we have pretty certain that they had space travel. So we don't know if they came here and colonized the Earth, or if they were evolved here, because we just don't have enough history exposed, because they burned it all. They were trying to burn it all for the last a couple thousand years. and before that, for the last 12,000 years, they were trying to eradicate all of that history and protecting it further back than that it was easier to protect. But then they had to get a hold of all the religions. So if that's what your reference is, then we just don't know enough about them. The crystal skulls, we think there's 13 crystal skulls. We currently are still missing one or two. We believe they may be the technology that created the crystal skulls that are bebopping around the earth, that we keep finding all over in different places in the Americas and over in China and Australia. The same with the stones that Stephen and Evan Strong and what's his name, Michael Tellinger are bringing around the world, that they found in South Africa and Australia, the crystal skulls, the elongated skulls. We're starting to correlate now and believe that all of that may be a little bit more accurate, and that what the Aborigines have been trying to tell us, and the Hopis here in the United States, not just them, but the Anasazi and the Apache and a few others, and the Aztecs, the Mayans, and the like from Central and South America, the Peruvians, and now discovering Göbekli Tepe and things over in Turkey and things around the world, that there's been a lot of knowledge that these people have been trying to tell us for generations that nobody was taking serious. And we're now actually starting to find that it's very possible that this stuff was in fact exactly that way. And we're starting to uncover that. So I can't really speculate. So then Cassie says, Leo, do you think that Alina Dedanan is light or on point with her challenging? Okay, so you're talking about the person now. So you're not talking about the Dudanan. Now you're talking about the Alina Dudanan that is now talking about that. Yes, but we still don't have enough. That's why I throw some of the stuff out there. And there's a lot of people like, literally the ancient aliens people and what's her name, Eisenhower. There's a lot of these people that are throwing a lot of information, the secret space program with those guys that are throwing a lot of this information around. Some of it is more accurate than anyone wants to know, and some of it's not. So you have to really kind of listen and kind of weigh it out for yourself, because I could say yes, 100% accurate, but then I don't know everything that she has said. So just like I don't know, that's why I want to get a hold of Terrence Howard, because I only know what he said on that video and the other videos from when he was given his commencement speech and things like that. So then right on cue, Denise says, Leo, in the Terrence interview, he mentioned that the planet Sirius, did they all come down from Earth when the planet fell? I hope I'm wording that right. Let's see that. Yeah, he talked about that, right? He did mention that. He mentioned a lot. That's why I want to talk to him. So yeah, so what he was saying is that they came from Sirius. Sirius is the dog star, right? That's why Sirius, and that the planet was here. Molbeck is what I'm referring to. That is the Kuiper Belt. He referred to the same, and that they came down here. Yes. So when they blew that one up, when that one blew up, all the refugees, because the damage that was done to the Earth and to Mars and to that planet was destroyed. Mars's atmosphere was destroyed. Earth's atmosphere was not completely destroyed, but our ecosystem was thrown out of balance, and they brought the moon over here and stuck it in orbit where it is to keep our ecosystem alive, and all refugees converged onto Earth. That is true. So she's saying that. Terrence is saying that. I've been saying that. The Australians have been saying that. The Aborigines in America and Australia, North American Aborigines have been saying that. The Egyptians were saying that. The Vikings were saying that. All these scrolls from around the world that we keep finding are talking about the destructions that had happened prior to the deluge. And you're finding that those correlate. And that's what I'm talking about in the reality about reality. Returning to the old ways, and then the book is going to further that. I'm introducing the knowledge of all of this in the first book, and then I'm going to show the examples of that in the next book that'll come out in a couple of years, 2 or 3 years from now. But yes, so to answer multiple questions, each has a piece that they're unlocking and talking about, that when you take them all and you go, wait, they seem to be talking about this. And that's where Terrence kind of mentioned that, how they start listening to these different things from around the world, and they start piecing them together and realize a bigger picture. That's what's happening in these people around the world, like myself. We all have our own individual thing that we're supposed to bring, the piece of pie. So we're all supposed to bring to this. So Terrence has his part, which is the physics aspect that I could have done, but knew that I wasn't here to do. Right. And I agree with Terrence because I know what he knows. So I'm not going to say that I know more than him, because I was blown away by what he said. And I was like, I wish I could have talked to him, because he's furthered ideas I had 40 years ago that I stopped thinking about because I was focusing on the spiritual and the alien portion of it. So I know that I'm not here to usurp from Terrence what he's doing. I'm here because I'm on a different aspect. I have a difference, just like Ellen has her own aspect. So everybody has their own aspect of things. Or, look at Ra and coming through Carla. She had her aspect that she brought here. That we're killing this evil on this planet by 1,000 slashes, to coin a phrase from the Middle East, an Arabic phrase. Not all of us are coming here with all of the knowledge, because we have to focus on a certain platform to get messages across. So that's because that's what they've done to this place, where, like he with the physics, Terrence with the physics, if I wanted to go down that road, I would have to have gone down that road. That's why he's having problems now, because he was an actor first, see? And he was popular as an actor, and now he's talking physics. So they're like blowing, and they're blowing it off and going, an actor doesn't know that, because you're used to actors being stupid high school dropouts who never go to college. And if they do, they go to an acting school, because that's how most actors are. Most actors and songwriters and singers, they're high school dropouts. They never went to college, and they chose that profession. I'm not saying there's anything wrong with that. I'm not saying that they're stupid, but I wouldn't trust Kelly Clarkson to do brain surgery. She would never want to do brain surgery, because she's like, I don't know anything about it. So, but the problem is that most producers, directors, and people in Hollywood see actors and actresses as dumb people who were really good at emotions and pretending and lying, basically, and pretending to be somebody else. And so that's what they do. Those same fucking producers can't do that. They don't have those skills. Otherwise, they would be actors and actresses. Do you see my point? So their skill is to be able to produce that shit in the business sense and put it all together. Directors direct, and some actors like directing, and some like producing, and some still do all of that. So there's some people that are really intelligent and they do all of it. But you can't be a nuclear physicist and a brain surgeon. That's, that whole ideology is like Buckaroo Banzai. Some of us have many talents that we delve a little bit in, but I would never want right now to get a doctorate in physics because you're stifled unless you have the money, which Terrence Howard had because of being an actor. He had enough money to be able to patent this stuff to keep them from getting control of it. Do you see? I didn't have that money, so I was going to have to focus on getting sponsors and scholarships, which means I would be under control of colleges and the federal governments to get grants. Most people who are in that industry of going around the world and trying to figure out physics, or anthropologists or archaeologists, are the same. They don't have their own money, so they have to get money. And when you get money from somebody else, they're in charge. Money's in charge. So therefore, you have to go by their agenda. That is what evil people, is part of the modus operandi that Ra is warning about. Okay, that literally that they have gained control of things to be able to keep you from doing what they don't want you to change the narrative. That's why the guys in Ancient Aliens had to go and get their money on their own. And that was how they were able to start getting the word out. Georgios Tsoukalos started his own app and his own magazine and became successful and made a lot of money and was able to take that money and then get other investors who were kindred spirits, like-minded investors, to help. And same with Childress and all the other guys. Look what Von Daniken went through with writing the Chariots of the Gods, and how much he got backlash for all those years of writing all those books about that. But he took the money he got from the sales of the books and getting paid to talk about it on other networks or radio studios all around the world. And he was able to use that money to then help invest when they were creating Prometheus. Do you see? So that's what it took. It took those guys years to do that stuff because they had to work by other people's leave with other people's grant money. And that means that you have to peddle what they're telling you to peddle. So I didn't want to do that in physics, and I got away from that. And I realized that through spirituality, I didn't have to worry about their money. I could take care of that and do that on my own. And that's what I've done at low budget. And that's what I've done. That's why I'm doing my own podcast and pay for my own podcast, because they can't cancel me, right? If they really wanted to, they could go to, say, Podbean and say to Podbean, that's it. We want him fired and out of here. But I don't just post on Podbean. So I'm posting. So they would have to have a coordinated effort. So they'd have to get Facebook to kill me. They have to get Google, which tried to kill me 2.5 years ago, deleted 500 episodes. But no one else did. Then would have to get Twitter. They would have to get Instagram, which is Facebook, so they could get me on if Facebook got me. But they pretended they act like it's two different platforms. Then they would have to go and get Anchor FM, which is Spreaker, and so they would have to get all these people to take me off the air all over the world. And then, I could still post it because it still goes up around the world, anyways. Do you see? So it's harder because I'm taking care of myself and I'm not living by someone else's leave. It's harder for them to get me off the air. Literally, Russell Brand, I think I just posted that in the chat. He was talking about Joe Rogan and his interview with Terrence Howard, and he did like a 22-minute segment that I think I put in the chat. If not, I'll do it after the show, that I watched today, where he was talking about independent people like himself, Joe Rogan, and other people, Tucker Carlson, a few others around the world, who are we're promoting ourselves and paying for ourselves, and it's harder for them. Joe Rogan, people have tried to take him off the air for what he has said, but he makes so much money for the platforms that he posts on that they're like, fuck you, unless you're going to pay us the $100 million that we make, or the $1 billion we make off of Joe Rogan, we're not taking him off the air just because you guys don't like it, unless you're going to pay us that money to make up for our loss that we're going to get from all the people who are not going to be paying us to advertise on Joe and to listen to Joe. Okay. So he is big enough to where he's writing his own. They tried to do it, Russell Brand, and he just moved his platform, and he's still out there, but he took a hit. He knows that, and he still champions that. So you should watch that video, because he's outright talking about that what's happening is the news agencies around the world, the big ones around the world, and their control over the world is waning. It's going away. The internet that they created thinking they were going to have total control and lockdown of the world, and the attempt to do so has spawned a bunch of people with technical savvy enough to create their own shit. And people are doing that and creating their own websites. I talked about doing that and just didn't do it. I talked about creating my own Blade server to where I could broadcast to the world on my own website that they didn't control, on a Blade server compound that I created that they didn't control. Why? So they couldn't kick me off the air. That's what, and anybody who relies on them, again, you're living by another's leave. So the modern world is now the way it was when, say, Australia stopped living by England's leave, when Ireland stopped living by England's leave, when America stopped living by England's leave, when Canada stopped living by France and England's leave, and they had revolts and they gained their independence and their freedom from these places. It was because they decided they did not no longer want to live under someone's leave, by their leave. And so they were ruling themselves. And this is what is the modern age is the social media, and the internets of the social media is the new version of basically living in Australia and kicking the English out, living in America and kicking the English out. Don't get me wrong, if you're English, I'm only using that because Australia, England, Ireland, Canada, that unfortunately they did that. I could have gone back further and said when Mexico kicked Spain out, you know what I mean? California, when California it kicked Spain out and they were ruling themselves over here, and they kicked Spain out, and all the Dons were ruling the Americas until the Americans came across the plains and stole it from them, and literally under attack of military troops. So my point is, then you could do the same thing with the Germans and the Russians and say that the Russians took their own path and got out from under the czars and revolted. The Germans did that during World War I and World War II, and then they eventually had to fight against the evil that took control of their countries, but they gained their independence and freedom, and then they tried to expand out to the world because evil people took control of that. And they had to fight against that. And now the Germans are free and they reunited their country. See my point? So I could go anywhere. And the French fighting the war against England back with Henry V. So you can see that how things have changed and people have fought back. So don't get me wrong. I'm not firing at England because there's good relations between England and most of Europe and everybody now. They're not so tyrannical overtly, because covertly all of the evil people are still trying to do that crap. You see my point? But it's not governments as systems of their in and of themselves. It's the oligarchs who think they own everything. Those are the ones that are bad. And they always have been, but they used to actually own places and call themselves kings and czars and pharaohs and that kind of shit. So, okay. So Cassie says, oh, you were talking to somebody else, right? What about the midgets in Indonesia, right? Oh, yeah. See, now you're just trying to derail me, Rick, by throwing me down every road that you want to go down, right? So only if you can truly feel what's true for you. Other people, this is Cassie responding, other people can pick up your energy and feel it as well. But through meditation, you can ask to know the truth. And you are not, in capital letters, just a normal human. You've had many lives before on this planet. Talking to Rick, and it looks like she's answering Rick. I'm not sure who she's answering right there, because it was somebody. She's just replying to Rick. So Rick says, "I'm serious," and so. Yeah, you have to discover that you have to look within yourself. This is what Ra's talking about here, where you have to look within yourself and balance that energy, and then talk to your higher self. You have to. So to do that, you have to do shadow work, and you have to then introduce yourself to your higher self, expand your consciousness to that, and meditate on that, and then you start to access the Akashic records of the halls of Amente, whatever you know that as. Terrence Howard referred to that as this mansion that he was able to go into, and that all this knowledge was there. And I don't know if maybe he was keeping that information back, or if he doesn't know the reference of the halls of Amente or the Akashic record. Another reason why I wanted to talk to Terrence Howard, to find out what he remembers and what he knows. So you access this records that are up there where your higher self and guides will go to sit in this hall Valhalla, it was the Viking version of that, only they turned it into, you go there and you party and drink and have sex and kill each other all day long. And then you all are alive at the end of the night. And you eat, party, and drink some more. And then you go to sleep, wake up in the morning, and murder each other again. But you don't really die. And then you have dinner and food with each other and party. And they turn it into a warrior thing of that you, when you die in combat, that's where you go. The modern version in the Middle East is you murder people in our name here, and you get to go to this halls of Amente where you have the heaven, and you get 88 virgins or whatever number they're throwing at them now, 470,000 virgins. And you get a virgin every day of your life, brand new, that you get to rape and deflower over and over and over. I wouldn't want to do that because they don't know anything. Virgin little girls don't know anything. I'd rather have a hooker. I want 88 hookers because they know how to screw. And I'm going to have great sex. And that's far more blissful for me than to have to have sex with a little girl who's going to be in pain because you're going to tear her hymen and she's going to be bleeding and it's uncomfortable and she's not going to like it just because you want your little teeny pee-pee to be tight in a little teeny coochie, right? So grow a bigger dick and then you won't have to worry about that. And you can sleep with a hooker that like the Stormy Daniels, who's had sex with 10,000 men, right? So I bet she knows what she's doing, right? I bet she can suck a garden hose or a golf ball through a garden hose. I don't want a little virgin 18-year-old, 16-year-old, 12-year-old little girl. I want Stormy Daniels. She got big boobs and she knows how to please a man. It's been her job, right? It's her profession. Right? I don't want 88 virgins. I want a couple of good hookers that are hot. That's who I want if I go to heaven. You see my point? So the point is, if you want to have good sex, you don't want to. That's not going to be good sex. It's not going to be good for her. So eventually, you're going to get tired of hurting some little girl over and over if you're deviant that way, and that's what you think you are going to get in heaven. I mean, that's in and of itself a bad thing to be. You should be looking at yourself, and you're not ready to get it because you're in service to self anyway. Because that's only if someone in service to self would want to rape little girls over and over every day with a brand new one for infinity. Okay, only evil people think like that. Okay, so you have to look within yourself and you have to expand your consciousness to ask and trust yourself to answer the questions. The problem is we keep looking to other humans for the answers, and what most of us are trying to teach you is you don't need me. I'm a tool, right? I'm here to help you, to give you the tools and show you how to use the tools so that you don't need me anymore. That's what most of us who are truly spiritual, who are truly trying to assist on this earth, that is our mission. Anybody who's trying to make a school and a harem is because they want to control the narrative and get rich. They're not doing it because they're trying to help people, although they may have good intentions and they may be trying to help people. But if their curriculum and their mission isn't, I don't want you to be here for the rest of your life listening to me as if I'm the savior, because you're the savior you're waiting for. You need to realize that. And that's what Ra's trying to teach. So Cassie was trying to respond, Rick, and telling you, you have to trust yourself and you know the answer to that. So you have to look within yourself and find yourself in the cosmos, your higher self, get in contact with your guides in your higher self. Trust that you can do that. Reach out to the universe and say you're ready for that and that you want to know the answers to these questions that you're asking, because you already know those answers. You just have to remember them. And that's what Cassie was saying to you in her response to you. Okay. All right. So let's get Ra and asking some more, because some people might be tuning out now because they're like, I don't know who this guy, he thinks he's to know it all. And he's just said, I came here to listen to Ra, not him. And so, I mean, if that's the case, you should be listening to Ra and reading the books on your own. If that's who you are, you don't need me because you think you know everything. And if that's who you are, you should be gone, because you should be just reading it for yourself and making up the answers. The truth is that's what we're trying to get everybody to do anyways, right? We're just trying to bring the knowledge to you, but everybody has their own thing, their own tools that they brought here to do. And you have to look at, where's my lane? What am I here to do? Some people aren't here to do what I'm doing. Not everybody's here to do what I'm doing. Right? Everyone's like, I need to tell the world. Maybe that's not why you're here. Maybe you're just here to assist in your own way that you can do. Right? So you have to find your skill set within yourself, know that, and find that. Where am I? And what exactly is it that I bring to the table of this earth? And did I come here to do something like that? Not everybody came here to do that. Some people are here just to experience this because they haven't done it ever, or if they've done it before and they want to do it again. So some of the people who are wanderers are assisting by their very nature of their vibration, and being a good soul is going to raise the all, and they know that. So that's how they're assisting, but they didn't come here. It was specifically going, I'm going to have a podcast and write a book and do this. They're just here living and loving every minute of it, and they're excited about what's going on here, but they're not going, I have to be part of a coalition and I have to uncover this. Some people are not here for that, but they are assisting. So you got to find where it is. Who am I is the question you should be asking. Why am I here? And what do I have to offer? Did I come here to offer anything? Am I here for the first time? Am I here for the seventh time? Am I here as a wanderer? You could really the only one who can answer that question, because you know what you brought. You just don't remember it. So you have to figure that stuff out and trust yourself. That's the hardest thing for all of us, is trust ourselves, right? Right. Yeah. Rick said it's only family here. Everybody else is probably left, right? Rick said it's only family here, bro. No one else comes in. So we don't walk away. And so, well, some people do, because I see the numbers, and sometimes there's 15, 20 people here, and then it dips down to 5 or 6, and then it goes back up. I see those numbers when people pop in and out when I'm live. So I know how many people per second. So I know there's sometimes, like if I talk to only politics, all of a sudden I get 25 people in here all at once. But when I start talking about only spirituality, it weeds out all of those people who want to hear about politics, and I only keep the core group. You're right, Rick. Absolutely right. So then the core group stays here, and you guys are the ones that are asking questions. Okay, let's continue.
And includes the mind/body/spirit complex totality or higher self of an entity, and those inner plane entities which have been attracted to this entity through its inner seeking. The second class of those who ward this process are those of the Confederation who have the honor/duty of standing in the small places at the edge of the steps of light/love, so that those entities being harvested will not, no matter how confused or unable to make contact with their higher self, stumble and fall away for any reason other than the strength of the light. These Confederation entities catch those who stumble and set them aright so that they may continue into the light. The third group watching over this process is that group you call the Guardians. This group is from the octave above our own and serves in this manner as light bringers. These Guardians provide the precise emissions of light/love in exquisitely fastidious disseminations of discrimination, so that the precise light/love vibration of each entity may be ascertained. Thus the harvest is automatic, in that those harvested will respond according to that which is unchangeable during harvest.
Right. So Rick said a lady from the kids' work I just left, a hard Scottish lady last night, said I was a beautiful person. I was stunned by her confession. So she may have the gift of sight, and she may have always known when she's saw you, whatever vernacular you use for past tense in Australia. Seen or saw, right? She has seen you or has saw you, that she may know that and never confess that to you until she decided to. Some people don't tell people what they know and see. We hold back a lot, and some stuff we can't tell you even if we want to tell you, because you're supposed to learn on your own. Confidence works that way. We're all here because we're supposed to learn. So there are some things that even psychics can't tell you because your higher self won't allow it, right? And we refer to source or the energy or the universe when we say the universe won't let me say that. Truly what they're saying is your higher self will not allow you to have that knowledge from me right now, right? And I try to get these psychics to start referring to things in that way, because that assists you into, wait a minute, so I am stopping you from telling me? Yes, you in the future is saying this is something that you in the past are supposed to learn on your own. So we're trying to get the psychics on board with that idea, but some psychics aren't aware that is what's happening themselves. Okay, so they don't use that reference, but that's actually what's happening. So when you ask a psychic something and they say, well, I can't tell you that because the universe says it's not allowing me to, that might be the extent of how they understand that scenario. It may not. It may be that they're not saying it because they don't want to freak you out by saying, well, your higher self is not allowing that. Well, why would I not allow myself to know that? Well, then you have to get into the whole details. So it's a lot easier for some people to hurry things along by saying, The universe won't let me tell you that because you're supposed to learn that on your own. But it doesn't help you. Do you see? It doesn't help you as much, right? So, but then are they aware of your development and where you are? And that's why, do you see how the dilemma that I'm running into? Because on an individual basis, again, like what Ra was talking about, from creator to creator, of what that medium knows, what they're willing to tell you, and maybe they know more, and they know that you're not ready to hear. Your higher self is the one that's not allowing me to tell you this. Do you see? Some do know that, some don't know that, some say it, and some hold it back. So that's why I never correct anyone when they say certain things, because you don't know, I don't know the answer to that. And if I do, and then I also know that what they're telling you is true, because you're not supposed to know the answer to that right now, because you're supposed to learn on your own. So it's not worth saying, well, let me correct you because I have to be Professor Precise. And what you know what I'm saying? Do you see how that is? So it's easier for us just to go, the point was made. We don't need to spend an hour for me to correct that person and try to upstage the person who's trying to do a reading on you. Some people have ego and have to do that. Well, what's actually what that means? You see people that do that in a psychic. If you've had enough readings for people, you see how one psychic is telling you something, and somebody in the crowd is also thinking that they need to tell you and pipe in and be the medium and tell you what's going on. And so that's why if you see me, I'm usually the quiet guy who doesn't say much at all when I'm watching another medium, because they're the ones that are doing the reading, not me. That'd be like walking in, sitting down with a psychic, and I'm with you, and you're getting a reading from the psychic, and I take over. Well, why did we even go to the psychic then? Why didn't I just do the reading for you? But I let you go to the psychic because my ego then wants to take over. You see my point? So some people have an ego, and they have to jump in because they feel that they need to tell, because the psychics, I'm better than this psychic. And that doesn't necessarily mean that's why they're doing it. Do you see? So I wait for you guys to ask before I give you any information, because until you're ready for it, then I'm not going. But sometimes I'll do like I did with Cassie, because I know Cassie's mind. I knew where she was going. And she even said that 100% just now. But she said exactly before. So she was trying to get the information to you in a type as fast as she could. And I knew what she meant. And that's why I'm, with my voice, able to extrapolate from how much I know from Cassie, and knew what was in her mind. Because she would have to type all that out. And it'd be this long paragraph for you to read. So she was trying to do as much as she could to give it to you as quick as possible. I didn't have to worry about that because it's my show and I can just talk. Here we go. Let's continue.
That is the violet ray emanation. However, these helpers are around to ensure a proper harvesting so that each entity may have the fullest opportunity to express its violet ray selfhood. 51.2 Questioner. Thank you. This next question I feel to be a transient type of question. However, it has been asked me by one whom I have communicated with, who has been intensely involved in the UFO portion of the phenomenon. If you deem it too transient or unimportant, we'll skip it. But I have been asked, how is it possible for the craft of, shall we say, the fourth density to get here, and that it seems that as you approach, the velocity of light mass approaches infinite. We have talked about the increase of spiritual mass, and it was just a question as to how this transition from very distant planets is made in craft, and my question would be why craft would be necessary at all. This is not an important question. Ra, I am Ra. You have asked several questions. We shall respond in turn. Firstly, we agree that this material is transient. Secondly, those for the most part coming from distant points, as you term them, do not need craft as you know them. The query itself requires understanding which you do not possess. We shall attempt to state what may be stated. Firstly, there are a few third density entities who have learned how to use craft to travel between star systems while experiencing the limitations you now understand. However, such entities have learned to use hydrogen in a way different from your understanding now. These entities still take quite long durations of time, as you measure it, to move about. However, these entities are able to use hypothermia to slow the physical and mental complex processes in order to withstand the duration of flight. Those such as are from Sirius are of this type. There are two other types. One is the type which, coming from 4th, 5th, or 6th density in your own galaxy, has access to a type of energy system which uses the speed of light as a slingshot and thus arrives where it wishes without any perceptible time elapsed in your view.
Right. So hold on, and then I'll get into what you guys are talking about on there. Let me let him finish what he's talking about here.
The other type of experience is that of 4th, 5th, and sixth densities of other galaxies and some within your own galaxy which have learned the
Because see, that's funny because Cassie is stating this fact as Ross talking about. That's why I said, I'll read what Cassie said. She said on the what planet question, I believe that a lot of us are from multiple different planets. Like I know that I've been to Siri and Andromeda, and from Orion as well. Well, Siri and Andromeda is not from Orion, but Siri is actually part of the Orion Nebula, but it's not the Orion's belt, but it's still part of the constellation of Orion. I think Andromeda is the bottom foot too, but don't quote me. But she says the Series B is where my soul favorite place was. Orion was the last incarnation before the Earth. And Ra's talking about that now, currently. So it's funny that you had brought that up and that Cassie had said that, because now Ra's talking about that, how many people are from multiple different places doing different things that are down here, right? So that's hilarious, right? And then she's responding to, are you a guardian? And she says, well, I'm not sure, but it kind of sounds like it. The answer to that question is yes. The answer to that question is yes. The Cassie is a guardian. That term from the movies, Guardian of the Galaxy. There is Guardians of the Galaxy that are a group of people that do what we do, and so the term and that whole ideology that was in the movies is based upon a ragtag, a fugitive fleet from around many different planets that go around to do what we're doing. And a lot of us come from the same regions because we're following this group of people undoing the crap that they're doing around the place. But in the truest sense of the word guardian, guardian of the galaxy, yeah, Cassie, you actually are. So it's just like, I think I am, because she's like, and your thought is, what do you mean by guardian? Let's define what you mean by that word. So by the strictest definition of guardian, yes, let's continue. And this is what Ross talking about right now.
Necessary disciplines of personality to view the universe as one being and, therefore, are able to proceed from locus to locus by thought alone, materializing the necessary craft, if you will, to enclose the light body of the entity. 51.3 Questioner, I assume that latter type is the type that we experience with most of our landings from the Orion group. Is this correct? Ra, I am Ra. The Orion group is mixed between the penultimate and the latter groups.
Yeah, because the Orion group is here, not just, that's where the temporal war is, guys, because the Orion group didn't just come in third dimension, they also came in fourth dimension. So they're out of phase with this dimension. So they came here in thought form. Some in fifth dimension came here in thought form, and thought form projects, usually projects a spaceship, because the people here can understand a craft and thinking. That's like when Ra came here, they projected themselves as humanoid, bipedal, and but they looked different than we did, so people thought they were gods. And they also projected a spacecraft, because the people here would accept that because it was conventional. Do you see? So asking that question about the Orion Crusaders, they came here at multiple dimensions, not just the third dimension. So some came here in spaceships, some came here in thought form, some came here as energy. Do you see? So if you look at, for instance, in 1948 in Roswell, New Mexico, the interview with that the CIA and the military conducted with Errol, the alien that didn't exist because Roswell was a weather balloon, yet they had this entire scenario where they were doing this cross-pollination, where exchange students, and Errol was one of the people that were crash landed and that survived. And Errol was actually a bio robot, like a drone, and the person that was communicating was not in fact in that body. She was jacked into it like a virtual reality, controlling that body, and told them that. And when they tried to attack her, to thinking they could hold her in there, she just turned off, flipped the switch, and she was in a ship someplace and a long ways off, in a command center, in a spaceship that wasn't even in this galaxy anymore. And she was communicating down here. So they were from a higher plane, and they were in physical form coming here in drones to come down to Earth, to conquer Earth and the people that they're fighting against in the third dimension. Part of the temporal war. People don't know about that, and it scares them. And when I say temporal war, and they go, what is that? That's a war that's going on throughout time in the physical plane, third dimension, and outside of time in the astral plane at the same time by the same beings. Do you see? Some of them came here in the physical, and some of them came here as physical by drones to pretend they were in the physical, to assist in the physical, but their actual bodies were in another place physically. And some came here as energy beings who projected with their mind a physical spaceship and physical body. Three different realities. Physicality in the physical sense here, flying a ship, physical body with a soul in it, like mine. Then drones, where their physical body is in a different place, hidden, and they're flying drones, space drones, and drones controlling spaceships to look like beings in it. And then beings projecting with their mind the same thing. Do you see? So that is the modus operandi of the Orion Crusaders. So that creates a inside of time, outside of time war between three different dimensions, three different densities of time and space, and space-time and time-space. So literally, people on this earth in the fourth dimension are here trying to conquer the earth in the fourth dimension. People on this earth here in the third dimension are trying to conquer the earth in the third dimension. People in the fifth dimension are occupying with their minds basically drones in the third dimension and thought form in the both dimensions and drones in the both dimension. Okay, so that means inside and outside of time. That means past, present, and future in this place, and then everything all at once, past, present, future all at once in the other place. That's a concept that'll freak you out unless you understand or understand that concept of the different realities and time space. If you don't already have that reference, you're just going to turn me off, think I'm making shit up right there. Okay, let's continue.
51.4 Questioner, why is a vehicle necessary for this transition? When you, as RA, went to Egypt earlier, you used bell-shaped craft, but you did this by thought. Can you tell me why you used a vehicle rather than just materializing the body? Ra, I am Ra. The vehicle or craft is the thought form upon which our concentration may function as motivator. We would not choose to use our mind/body/spirit complexes as the focus for such a working.
Right. So right. Rick, your analysis is right. Thinking, he says that I say that maybe the body is a vessel in the ship, and the brain is the control board, and the soul is the pilot. That's truly what's going on with this avatar. And we're trying to help you expand your consciousness, and all the religions are through meditation. We're getting you to elevate yourself to the place where you're no longer the thinking mind, and the ego no longer can reach you. And why do we do that? Because we're trying to introduce you to your higher self. Because the concept of I am not the thinking mind, I am not the ego, I am not this pain body. We're trying to show you all three of those things, that you are, in fact, that's four-dimensional thinking. Terrence Howard talked about that in that interview with Joe Rogan. What we're trying to do is get you to understand the concept that you cannot think and you're not listening to the ego and you still exist. What is that about you? Who is that? If you're in a place where you're not thinking at all and the ego is not trying to talk to you and can't reach you, and you are still there, that means you're not the ego and not the thinking mind, and you can't be this body. So that's the expansion of your consciousness into the first realization, and that thought process that you just had and just said, that the body is a vessel and that the brain is the control board, and that your spirit, right, your soul, your immortal soul, not just the spirit body, but the soul body, is what is controlling that, because you are in fact there. And where is there? That is not in this third dimension anywhere, because you can pulverize this brain. And that's what, if you watched Buckaroo Banzai Across the Eighth Dimension, what he was talking about when he says when he flew into a mountain, and when he came out the other side, he had this this animal that's not human, this ball with suckers on it that was attached to the underside of his ship. And he said, and he hid that, and he said, this rock is made up of, and 90% of this rock is not this dense matter. That it's made up of 90% something other than this dense matter. And you could take this rock and you could pulverize it and sift through it to the end of time, and you'll never find this. And he pulls the cover off of, or the little drape that he had over, and inside of this dome of glass, inside there was this living entity that's not from the earth. That was the expansion of that to the idea of multiple dimensions, and that inside a mountain could be a dimension that is outside of this place. And that was what the writers of that story that became that movie that what's his name? I can't think of his name right this second. I can see his face. Who was a professor at a college forever, played that part. I can't think of his name. It's right there on the tip of my brain, and it won't come to me. Peter Weller, he played Buckaroo Banzai. But that was what that was all about, was the expansion of your consciousness to the realization that not everything what you see is what is real, that there is more dimensionality to the 3D. And the first realization is that there are two Ds, dimension and density. Density is a place that is outside of time, that is outside of this dimension, this physical place. And that's where you actually reside. And that's what happens when the concept that you were talking about comes to you when you start to realize, I'm still here. Where is that here that I am? It's not in this place. Well, where is that? And that's when you start getting introduced to that concept of wow, this is something completely different. And where is that? Well, that's the density. That's outside of time. So you're not bound by past, present, and future in that place. And in that place, you're immortal. You don't die. That's the next step in that evolution of the realization. And so that's when you actually look at this body as if it is an avatar. This is the vessel, and I am controlling it from somewhere else, just like as if I was in a drone. And I'm on a computer controlling a drone that's flying over Afghanistan or wherever, or a drone that I'm flying above my head that's flying around the neighborhood. No different. Put on those virtual goggles, which we now know Terrence Howard was the person who invented that technology, by the way. Right? So literally, sorry, you guys are talking in the chat of Orion Rise, or I'm sorry, of Law of One chat, and that actually opens up right where the chat is for this show, because I'm on Facebook, so it opens up right here. And so I look down sometimes, thinking that I'm reading what you're saying in the show, and it's you guys talking in the chat in Messenger, because it literally opens up. And if I don't see the border at the top, knowing that it's not this border from here, then I'm like, what are they saying? I'm like, that's totally different. Oh, that's a totally different conversation, because that's happening not on the live show. Okay. That's funny. Cassie said, my mom just got mad at me for bringing my phone to the dinner table. I'll be right back. That's hilarious. Mom's like, what are you doing? Because I'm talking through dinner for her over there. That's funny. All right, let's continue. So Ra is kind of describing that. Let's continue with that, people.
51.5 questioner. Thank you. I would like to make a statement. I'm sure I'm somewhat off with this. It's a very difficult question to ask for me, because I don't really know what I'm talking about. But it seems to me, and you can tell me where I am going wrong with this statement, that we have 7 bodies, each corresponding to one of the 7 colors of the spectrum, and that energy that creates these 7 bodies is a universal type of energy that streams into our planetary environment and comes in through 7 energy centers that we have called chakras to develop and perfect these bodies, and this is. Each of these bodies is in somehow related to the mental configuration that we have, and the perfection of each of these bodies and the total INST you might say, of this energy is a function of this mental configuration, and through this mental configuration we may block, to some extent, the INST of energy that create each of these 7 bodies. Could you comment on where I am wrong and correct me in this that I have stated? Ra, I am Ra. Your statement is substantially correct. To use the term, mental configuration, is to oversimplify the manners of blockage of INST which occur in your density. The mind complex has a relationship to the spirit and body complexes which is not fixed. Thus blockages may occur betwixt spirit and mind, or body and mind, upon many different levels. We reiterate that each energy center has 7 subcolors, let us say, for convenience. Thus spiritual/mental blockages combined with mental/bodily blockages may affect each of the energy centers in several differing ways. Thus you may see the subtle nature of the balancing and evolutionary process. 51.6 Questioner: I am unsure as to whether this will provide an avenue of questioning or not that will be fruitful. However, I will ask this question since it seemed to me that there is possibly a connection here.
Okay,
On the back of the book.
Before he asked this question, so let me focus on. So he literally just said that each center has 7 differential colors, just like our chakras. So you have layers to each level. 7 layers for every 7 chakra. There's a number 7 repeating itself. Okay, so you'd have to look into that, right? Which is controlled by 3 and which is controlled by 6, and then the 9 controls the 3 and the 6. And so you have, what is it, 4, 7, 8? No, 4, 3, 1, 4, 7. Isn't that what it is? 2, 6, and whatever it is. The Pythagorean theorem. But you have each chakra has 7 layers to it, and those are coinciding with the rainbow again, because they're different aspects of that totality. So you have the red chakra, which is the place of the beginning, and in that beginning you have those 7 layers again. Do you see? So you have the major archetypes, and then the minor archetypes, or the major chakra centers, 7, and then you have sub centers to each one, but then you also, every joint that you have is another chakra. So you have all of that going on at the same time. So people think that we're in the 3D and we're going into 12D now. You're just going into the next level of 3 dimension. Okay, or you wouldn't be in this dimension. Since you don't know what's going on this earth in the 4th dimension, it's because you're not actually there in real dimension. What you're referring to, and you don't know it, is the density of where the totality of these people are moving into. We're not going to phase out and skip over the 4th dimension and phase into the 5th dimension. The 5th dimension is far more energy than a physical body. And it's about 3/4 physical body. Yeah, it's the other way. It's 3/4 energy, but still 1/4 physical body. But that doesn't mean it's just the head, although it does kind of go that way. So it does kind of go that way. Your legs start disappearing, you start not needing them, and then they go away. And you see the physical aspect of people that do that. You go into space and you don't use your legs and you don't need them to support your weight, and they start to atrophy. Okay, so going to the weightlessness of space, and say you lived in space floating around and never had to step on land and hold your body weight up anymore, and that was your world, your legs would atrophy, and eventually in a couple of generations they would go away. Science knows that about humans. So that's why people think that, well, the grays are us from the future. They're not, but they kind of are, because some of the grays came from the future, but they're not human evolution in the future. But it is possible, because there are infinite possibilities. So it is possible that humans somewhere evolved into the grays, but you don't devolve like that. But you do in the physical like them. So they have a bigger head. And so some say that is the natural evolution of the human race. If we went out into space and we never touched, or we went and moved onto a planet that had less gravitational pull than this one, the problem with that is, that's why Terrence Howard talked about that in that video. The reason that we're able to sustain life is because we are in the Goldilocks zone. If we go to try and live on Mars, we have to change the atmosphere. Otherwise, we have to be in a spacesuit. Because without the spacesuit, our body pushing out against the pressure of this place, it'll explode. Okay, without a pressure suit. That's why they're called that. Same thing, if you're literally taken down to the bottom of the ocean too fast, you will implode. The pressure gets, because of the water pressure, pushes against you. You have to have negative pressure inside whatever vessel that you're in that is holding the pressure out by pressurizing what you're in. And even if you're in an environment like that and you come back up too fast, your body, because the pressure outside You can take more pressure going down faster than you can going up. You have to slowly release the pressure so that your body doesn't explode. And so you get the bends, and all of the oxygen in all of your blood pops, and that's what's called the bends. So literally, the only way we'd have to terraform a planet and turn it into this Goldilocks zone. But the problem with that is we would have to live in biodomes, and Terrence talked about that, because if we don't, the pressure from the space itself is different on Mars because they're further away from the sun. Not just the radiation coming from the sun, but there's an actual pressure in the universe itself at distances away from the sun. And science doesn't want to admit that out loud. And that's why when he was talking about that, that sounded really crazy to some people, right? Because of him stating that. But they're aware of that. That's why he was talking about gravity. Gravity has far more to do with the electromagnetic wave of the Earth than it does of the spinning of the Earth, except for the spinning of the Earth is creating an electromagnetic wave.
There are several
Sorry, I reached over and was touching. There was a crumb on my computer, and I actually touched it. And when I touched it, it turned on because it is a touch. I have a touchpad here. I could also touch the screen because I have a touch screen. I touched the touchpad and it started playing raw. Okay, let's continue with raw.
Reproductions of Egyptian drawings or works, some showing birds flying over horizontal entities. Could you tell me what this is and if it has any relationship to RA?
All right. Denise said, Terrence said so much of what you teach us, except he never said, I understand. No, there's some, that's why I was wanting to know. I want to talk to him because I want to know just how much he does know and how awake he is, how unveiled that he is. I think he has a lot of memory. I don't know how much, because he might be holding back and not saying things on purpose, or he may not know those things. But you're right. The things that he was saying, that's why when I was listening, I was like, okay, he knows a lot more than 98% of the population does because of what he was saying. That's another reason why I wanted you guys to see it, because, you hear me say it. If you're a follower of mine, you hear me say this stuff. Well, here's somebody that I don't know who's talking, and they're saying these things, right? So does that give validation to me? Yes. But do I give validation to Terrence? Yes. Right. But who am I in the minds of the same people who are going to say Terrence is false? I'm just as false. But I've never met Terrence. So he's another example in life that I've never met Terrence. He's evolved in his lifetime, and he knows and has unlocked what I have known and unlocked. Well, some people will say, well, you guys have read all the same books, and you're just basing your crazy shit on some crazy shit that other crazy shit-ass, bat-shit crazy people said from around the world, right? And you can tell that he knows a lot about and has read. He probably has read more scientific research than I have, and it dedicated my life to it for a long time. But I doubt it. Chances are we probably have read the same. And you can tell by what he's saying that he's also read a lot of spiritual stuff. Because that goes before they separated everything. I talked about that earlier, how everything is, you have to have the one avenue that you can go down only, because you have to have the piece of paper that says, you know what you're talking about in just that specific thing. That's why you have people that are nuclear physicists, or you have people that are astrophysicists, and you have people that are theoretical physicists, and people that are applied physicists. 800 years ago, the guys knew everything. They were astronomers, astrologers, physicists. Half of them were doctors as well. Do you see my point? So these guys rounded out their knowledge, and they were knowledgeable in all these things. Is that saying that people can't have that same knowledge now? No, it's not. But they want you to have a doctorate in everything to be an expert. Why? Because they're making money off charging you for every single one of them. So you don't know what you're talking about unless you have that license that says somebody said you know what you're talking about. Well, who said that guy said? And there's the chicken and the egg. How far did that go back? Because somebody went back far enough to where no one used to have those. And somebody said, we have to do something about these people that are lying about knowing this shit. So I get why you have to have the license. Don't get me wrong. Because somebody could just say, I'm a brain surgeon and do brain surgery, and they have no fucking idea what they're doing. So you have to prove that you're worth, but that also, you have people that are coming from India that have been a doctor over there or a scientist over there for 30 years. They come to the United States and we're like, no, sorry. You have to go to our college and pay us the $5 million to get a piece of paper in this country before we'll let you do that job. And that's a frustration of people from around the world when they come to the European countries that say, you haven't gone to our schools and paid us our money. to say that you know what you're talking about. And that's what they do. So the rich elite oligarchs that are in Europe and America do that to everybody else in the world and treat them as if they're third world countries and that they're not legit. India has fucking spaceships up in space and they have satellites. They didn't need America to do that. They didn't need the European school to do that. They learned it on their own. Did they come and learn some of the stuff that some maybe, but most of these countries like China and Japan are bypassing America and Europe. Why? But not because they went to the American and European schools. They educated themselves, learned from what these people wrote about, and then furthered that shit on their own. And now you have people from America and Europe that are having to go to Chinese and Japanese schools to learn what the hell's going on because they're falling behind. Okay. So the Indians are doing the same thing. When they come up with a new technology, all of a sudden, everybody from these schools that they don't acknowledge over here run to India to find out what these scientists over there who can't get a job in America are doing and have created the new shit. All of a sudden, they're legit now and they believe in what they're doing is real because they've come up with better technology than the yahoos over here have. And now they have to legitimately say they know what they're talking about. But if that same scientist came to America, they'd be like, sorry, we don't recognize you as a scientist over here. You did when I had some shit you needed from me that I invented. Do you see? So that's all money-making scheme. The same thing with everything else is the problem with that. But Terrence, yeah, love Terrence, and I will be talking to him in the future. Okay, let's continue here because I got to get off here soon.
Ra, I am Ra. These drawings of which you speak are some of many which distort the teaching of our perception of death as the gateway to further experience. The distortions concern those considerations of specific nature as to processes of the so-called dead mind/body/spirit complex. This may be termed, in your philosophy, the distortion of Gnosticism, that is, the belief that one may achieve knowledge in a proper position by means of carefully perceived and accentuated movements, concepts, and symbols. In fact, the process of the physical death is as we have described before, one in which there is aid available and the only need at death is the releasing of that entity from its body by those around it and the praising of the process by those who grieve. By these means may the mind/body/spirit which has experienced physical death be aided, not by the various perceptions of careful and repeated rituals. 51.7 Questioner, you spoke in earlier time of...
Okay, I think we're gonna stop there with Raw, and because I'm gonna get off here soon, so I'm gonna back us up to 51.6 for next week. So, yeah, so we can wrap it. But you guys have any questions? Ask the questions now before I get off of here, and we'll pick back up next time, right? So, Rick says, "Okay, folks, I got to go." Right? Yeah. See, everybody is needing to go anyway. Cassie had to go because she has to eat dinner, and she can't be on here listening to me, and no one in her house wants to hear me talk at the time, probably, right? I need to shave my head, right, and beard, and go find a bike pump. I'm not walking around like this yesterday again, right? Okay. So yeah, it's 10:13 a.m. for you right now. Is that what it is? Right? Is that what he's saying? Is that what you're saying? Okay. So yeah, it's not nighttime. He's not going to bed, Denise. It's morning. He's 16 hours ahead of me. And you're not in California. I think you're in Midwest or East Coast time, right? I'm not sure. I don't remember. But yeah, he's 16 hours ahead of me, right? So, all right, guys. So I'm going to end there because Cassie had to go. Rick's got to go. Those of you who are in Europe, you're 8 hours ahead of me. You guys are trying to go to bed. So if you're on UK time, you're trying to go to sleep. So the only people who are behind me or way enough ahead of me, like Rick, because he's 16 hours or 17 hours ahead. So for those of us in the North American continent, you guys could probably stay a little bit longer, but I need to get off here anyway. It's getting later. I got to tend to my mother and get dinner here in a little bit. So we'll stop there and we'll pick up. I'll back up another question or two just so that we can, maybe I'll go back to 5, listen to 5, 6, and then get back up to 7, or maybe I'll start at 6. I'll listen to the questions and see, because they're all good questions and they're leading into the same subject, but they got off the subject we were talking about. Okay. All right, guys. So yeah, hopefully soon I will be hearing from Terrence or his people, or Joe Rogan or his people, and if anybody's out there actually has contact with Terrence Howard, give him my name and my podcast if you want, so he knows I'm legit, so you can hear what I'm talking about. But I do need, and I will, once my book comes out, they're probably going to be a lot of people talking about that. So I'll get more notoriety. And so then some of these people that will be contacting me, right? But Terrence he's going to revolutionize science, whether it happens in this direct generation or the next. Some might speculate and say, oh no, it'll take like normal people. It takes 100 years or so. 2037 is going to be the 2000th anniversary of Jesus being crucified. 2032 is a milestone for this planet. Things are changing exponentially faster than anyone realizes, and we are trying to make things happen on a very, very fast scale, and it is happening, and that's why they're fighting so hard to keep that from happening on this earth, okay? So just know that if you're alive today, you're alive in a time that is crazily good, and things are crazily going to change. If you're alive today, and you'll be alive in the next 30 to 40 years, sooner it'll begin. But but literally you're going to see the face of this earth change. But then if you go back in time to 100 years ago, anybody that's been alive and they're 100 now, they've seen this earth change from covered wagon to the moon. Do you see? So if you were born like my mom, who's going to be 80 in 2 weeks, literally that is, if she had her memory, she would have gone from, prop planes to the moon in her lifetime, from radio to the advent of television, to the advent of computers, to the advent of smartphones in her lifetime. That's a crazy amount of technology. And she went from women not having the right to vote when she was born, women not having the right to getting jobs at all, to the way it is now. She went from, just past slavery. She was born in 1942. No, 1944, 45. So she went from, only 100 years, not even 100 years, 70 years since slavery had ended when she was born. So there are people that were still alive that were children during slavery in the United States when she was born. Now, that's completely changed. See my point? So if you're alive today, you're going to see exponentially changes occur to this way of life. And it's going to be scary because everybody thinks we have to have money. Like if I told you we didn't need to breathe air, that would scare you. You wouldn't believe me. But we don't need money. Money is a construct to control all of us. We don't need anything. Used to not be money 1,000 years ago. People didn't have money. That was started. If you go back in time, you can see that it was in pockets around the world where they were trying to get coin and trading things. Barter system was the way it was. But if you're just watching, say, the Curse of Oak Island, they're finding beads that were glass beads that were money. It was money that was traded on this earth 1,100 years ago, 1,200 years ago, 1,000, 2,000 years ago. Beads was money. Salt was money. Was the majority of the time on this earth. Salt was money. That's where you get that term, worth his weight in salt. And now we say like worth his weight in gold. But he's not worth his weight in salt, because salt was the currency on this earth because it was a preservative, and salt was necessary for our bodies. If you're living and you need water, you need salt as well. You sweat out all your salt and you don't have any salt in your system, you could die. So salt was money, because then you could preserve all food by packing it in salt. So salt was actually what you use to cure meat with, except for pork. Pork would get snotty and go poisonous. So that's why you were not supposed to eat pig or anything that wasn't had a clubbed hoof, because all of the animals that have a clubbed hoof were you couldn't eat because it would go bad. Pigs have a clubbed hoof and they would spoil. You'd have to cook it and eat the food right after you killed it, or it would go bad. So they would just say, don't eat it. It's unclean. Don't eat that. It's easier to tell children, don't touch that. It's hot. Don't eat that. It's unclean, than to say, well, you can eat it, but you got to eat it today. Do you see my point? So you could pack everything else in salt, which another reason why people didn't live very long, because their sodium level was fucking through the roof. And they were all dementing, and or the sodium was making everybody high blood pressure, and they were either dying young or killing each other because they were so angry all the time. So we became less having problems with our blood pressure when we didn't have the salt. But if you were out there living, you were burning up most of that salt. So those people, but when you had started refrigeration, we had to stop packing stuff in salt, because we had to lower our salt because we didn't need the salt. But if you're living out in the deserts of Africa, you need salt. Salt keeps you alive because you're burning off all your salt sweat. You need water and you need salt. So salt was the currency before they started using other things. And that's why Terrence talked about that in the show. Why is it that gold became so precious? Gold is everywhere. We didn't need it. So why is gold and diamonds so precious to everybody on the planet if that wasn't programmed by someone before? It was a great postulation that he had, because I've asked that same question. And why do we think that gold is rare when it's everywhere? I used to have gold in my teeth. People do that for fun. There's Goldschlager, an alcohol that has gold in it. We take gold, and you see commercials on television, at least here in the United States, they take gold filigree and put it over a cupcake or a cake, and you're eating it. We have so much gold. Gold's not rare. It's just valuable because we've said it is. Diamonds aren't valuable because we make them now, but we call those as zirconian, and we say that those aren't as worth as much money because the earth didn't make it by spending 500,000 years smashing it. But they're everywhere, and the planet makes them. So they're not rare. Rare earth elements are the ones that are mostly in China that make up all of our lithium batteries and our computer touchscreens and our cell phone touchscreens. Those are rare. That's rare. And the majority, 90% or 80, I think it's 84% of the entire Earth's minerals that we use for all of our cell phones and all of our computers and all of our touchscreens around the world come out of China alone. We need to start finding it in other places on the planet. That's a rare element. Gold's not rare. It's every fucking place. It's all over the planet. Oil is not rare. It's every fucking place. It's all over the planet. Anywhere where dinosaurs died or animals died, we humans will turn into oil if we get stuck in the ground in a bog. Right? Well, bogs like in Ireland will preserve you, like mummify you. But if we get in the ground and get the peat moss and everything on us, we'll turn to oil too. Okay? So that's not rare. It's all over the place. We just have to mine it. Gold is not rare. Diamonds are not rare. But we believed that when people said it, because somebody programmed that into our minds that it was worth more than anything else. And so we bought into that and we believe it. And so they'd sell us on this gold's rare. Really? Go to one of your malls. I don't care where you are. If you're in a not a third world country, and even them, but if you're in a Western country, a European style country, you know what I'm talking about. Go into a mall, you're going to find 5 stores that have probably $100 million worth of gold and diamonds and jewelry in that place. If you went in there and robbed it, you get $100 million, and there's 4 or 5 of them, and it sits around with $100 million in each one of them all year round, in every mall, in every town, in every city, across the entire planet. Does that sound like gold and diamonds and rubies are rare? There's so many of them. They're sitting around, tons and tons and tons of that shit, sitting on shelves behind all kinds of security. That doesn't seem rare to me. Seems like there's a ton of it. Tons, hundreds of tons of it just sitting around. But they tell you it's worth a lot of money, and they charge you a lot of money for it, and you give them a lot of money so that you can look at it and go, look, this is a big fucking diamond that's worth $10,000. Somebody else is going to hold you up with gunpoint and take it from you. And then they got to try and sell it to somebody else, and they're not going to get $10,000 for it. They're going to get $1,000 for it. And it's going to end up back in the hands of the rich people, and they're going to hold on to it and give it to each other back and forth for $10,000 worth of something. They'll appraise it for that, and the appraisal gives it as money that they call an investment. Do you see? I have a diamond that's worth $10,000. It's only worth $10,000 when you fucking sell it for $10,000. Otherwise, it's a rock. It's just sitting on a shelf somewhere. Same thing with your portfolio in stock markets. It isn't worth shit till you cash it in. Do you see? You have a portfolio worth $1 million. That is worth no money unless you sell it for that $1 million and take that $1 million and put it in the bank. And then that money in the bank isn't worth anything either until you withdraw it and spend it. Do you see? That's how they've convinced you that it's real. It's not. It's all made up. It's all fake. Read my book on how to get out of debt, surviving in the 21st century. I explained to you in there how they invent money. It's fake. It's not based on anything. All this European money, if you're in Australia, if you're in Europe, if you're in Asia, if you're in America, none of that money is backed up by actual tangible gold, silver, or jewels. It's just printed. It's just invented by what they call the central banking system, the Fed here in the United States, federal banking system of England, federal banking system of Europe. They just print it. Or they just put it onto a computer and then it exists. And then credit card companies invent new ones. They give you a loan. I'll give you credit. I'll give you a line of credit. They just invented $5,000 for you that you have to pay an interest on that when you spend it. So they give you $5,000 whenever you want to spend it, but you have to pay them back at 29% interest or whatever the interest rate is. So they make money off of you. They're loan sharks. Banks do the same thing. They give you a loan. What are they giving you? They're giving you the other people's money who bank there. That's how they have their money. I go to a bank and I give them $10,000. They loan $9 of that $10,000 to somebody who wants a loan. And if somebody wanted a $10,000 loan, they take $1,000 for somebody else's money and they loan it. But then they have it on credit on a piece of paper on a computer that says you still have that money, but you can't go and get all that money in cash. They'll give you a cashier's check that you have to go and give to somebody else. They don't want to give you $10,000 in cash because they don't have that. Okay. They've convinced you that this fake money is real and you tally it in your brain and you can check it on your phone and it tallies what's in your bank account. That money doesn't exist until you spend it. And even then it's just transferring money that's fake to the store for the goods that you're buying. And then they get credit. That's all it is. That's why they're trying to do away with cash, because they can control the credit and turn you off when they tell you time for you to be locked down for the next pandemic. Turn your car off because you drive an electric car with a low jack. Turn your bank account off. You can't go out and spend any money because you're locked down. That's what they want to do. That's what they're trying to do. All right, guys. I love you guys. Have a great night, right? Right here, Cassie. She came back, right? Yeah, you actually got to. She stuffed herself with some food. I was trying to get off here because I knew you were. Rick had to leave. You had to leave. Everybody's leaving anyway. And then I ended up talking long enough for you to come back from eating dinner. That's hilarious, right? All right. So I love you guys. I got to go. It's 6 p.m. now over here in California. I love you guys. This is Orion Rising. I am your host, Leonard O'Neill. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, or good morrow, depending on where in the world you are tuning into the show. Have a great night. I'll see you guys next week. Wait, let me get back into the studio so I can turn this off. All right, guys. I'll see you guys later. I love you guys. I love everybody out there on the planet. Know that, whether you know me or not, whether you care or not, I still love you. And I know that you love this world. And if you don't love this world, then you hate it. And I love you anyways, because I greet you with the love and the light of the infinite creator, Adonai.